Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It being 6 o'clock on Thursday, May 14th, we'll begin our 6th budget hearing of the season for our FY27 budget for the Committee of Ways and Means. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for all those who serve in our military, at home and abroad, and for their families. Thank you. Clerk Semino, could we begin with a roll call, please?
Councilor Barrica?
Here.
Councilor Reynolds is presently not here. Councilor Flaherty?
Here.
Councilor Maglio?
Here.
Councilor Sterling?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Semino. All right, we have no approval of minutes this evening and no old business. As a note for anyone watching at home, the public hearing, when public comment will be taken, will be held at the full council meeting on Tuesday, May 26, 2026 at 7 p.m. If you have questions between now and then, you may send them through to the clerk of the council through email at towncouncil@braintreema.gov. And again, as bears repeating, a huge thank you to our BCAM team for recording this for all of our residents to watch from home and at their convenience. All right, this evening we're going to be reviewing the law department, municipal licenses and inspections, and the finance programs. Is there a motion to take off the table Order 26033, 26034, and 26035?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, Solicitor Rossetti, this evening. Thank you for being here. Forgive me, I don't have my book out yet. Okay. The law programs can be found on page 103 in the budget book. And Solicitor Rossetti, if you would like to start off with a statement, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Barrica and members of the Ways and Means Committee. It's my pleasure to appear before the body tonight to discuss the proposed FY27 budget for the legal department. When I was last before this body to discuss budgets, I had literally just started my service here as solicitor for the town of Braintree, and I can tell you it's been a wonderful year getting to work with Mayor Joyce and her team, as well as the town council, department heads, and all town staff. My role as solicitor is to serve the town government writ large. That means the mayor, her team, the department heads, this body, all councilors in their official capacity, other staff in their official capacities. So, as I said, it has been a great pleasure serving and look forward to continuing to serve. So I look forward to answering any questions the body may have about the budget. You'll notice if you compare the proposed FY27 budget to our budget from last year, it largely mirrors the line items that were part of the FY26 budget. There's an increase of about 0.5%, so we're staying in line. And for the benefit of the members of the public, I think it would be good to clarify my role as solicitor, because while everyone here in this room understands the role, I think it's important for the public too to realize what the solicitor does. My role is to be the attorney for the town. So if, for example, a question arises about whether a particular action is authorized in the charter or under our ordinances, I'm consulted about that. If litigation is filed against the town, or if the town needs to file litigation against another party, I'm there to help to represent the town's interests. Anything and everything with a legal bearing on a town would come before my attention. So with that said, it's also important because there is sometimes a misunderstanding. A town attorney is not legal counsel to the residents, and that misunderstanding is certainly well-intentioned. I understand where people might get confused on that point. So my role is to be the public attorney for the town. So in that role, I defend the town's interests and prosecute the town's interests. And I've had a wide variety of work. I've had the pleasure of performing over the past year, including with members of this body. And I look forward to answering any questions you may have tonight.
Thank you so much, Solicitor Rossetti. And congratulations on your one-year anniversary with the town of Braintree. Before I open it up, I do want to offer appreciation. You probably know it's been a longstanding concern of the council that we don't have our own attorney. However, I have always, in the last year, found you extremely accessible, available, prompt, and fair, and also have been a huge help in our work on ordinances, rules, and other matters. So
Thank you,
sincerely
Councilor.
thank you, because that helps us do our work better for the residents that we serve. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor.
With that, I know this is a fairly small little budget. Do councilors have questions? Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you. So I was reading your goals, and goal number 1 is to limit the use of outside legal counsel services, which is great. I hope you're successful with your goal. But what I was wondering is when we do have to contract for outside legal services, which of course we will always have to sometimes, where does the fees that we pay the outside counsel, where does that come from? Does that come from the law budget, or does that come from elsewhere in the budget?
There's a line item within the legal department for outside legal fees, legal services, and I believe that line item, Council, is $125,000.
It is. I was going to ask if that's what that was for.
Yes.
So that's $200,000 less than last year, but it's the same, well, it's $200,000 less than what is projected for FY26.
I'm sorry, Councilor.
And also 25. And so how do you go about achieving that? How do we limit external counsel if we only have one solicitor?
That's an excellent question. And your question actually delves into how a department like mine can operate well in a municipal environment. I have a wide-ranging experience, and as a generalist, serving essentially as general counsel for the town, I look at myself as akin to someone who triages. For example, an emergency room physician who triages in an emergency room has to figure out what ailment is affecting the next person coming into the emergency room and how best to address that person's needs. I have a wide amount of experience in nearly 20 years of being a municipal attorney, so many legal tasks I can undertake myself, but as the sole attorney in the department, there are only so many hours in the day. And as the sole attorney, there's 100% opportunity cost when I am working on a particular task. So if I'm working on one particular task or case, that means everything else either has to wait. And with that, I'm very scrupulous about making sure I understand the deadlines for when people need particular tasks done, and I'm able to prioritize that way. In terms of bringing in outside counsel, that will be a function of the specialization required of a particular matter. There are significant specialties and subspecialties I have knowledge of, but these experts are able to come in at a moment's notice and hit the ground running. I could certainly learn more about their particular field, but like the emergency room physician treating the patient, I have to look at what's best for the town. And sometimes what's best for the town, given my workload and my skill set, sometimes the best thing is to bring in the outside expert. Granted, that will incur a fee, but in the long run, the town is getting better representation, I believe, when that specialist comes in. And there are times in the course of, in the life cycle of cases where that will include having to bring in expert witnesses for particular cases. Now, I can't get into specifics about cases or strategy. That would be best left for an executive session. But these costs do arise. I would analogize to a sine curve, ups and downs, bring in a little trigonometry for our discussion tonight. Ups and downs depending on the life cycle of cases. And there are times in cases where you're waiting months for a particular court decision, so you're in kind of a lull. And then other times when you're in the middle of discovery where you're working almost every day on a case. So that can also be a function of how fees will move over time. But those are the considerations that go into bringing in outside counsel.
So I understand you certainly do have a breadth of experience and knowledge, and like you said, the legal field is quite varied, and there are specialists who are better suited to represent Braintree in certain situations. And like an emergency room, which is a good analogy, I think, you just take what comes. You don't have any control, whether there's a car accident or, I don't know, someone fell off a ladder. You don't know what it's going to be. So, like, your goal is to limit the use of outside legal services, but how do you, in your capacity, do that when you don't have control over what comes your way?
I know what my particular strengths are, and what my I know my background well, and what I have done in the past, and where my experience lies. For example, much of my experience lies in employment and labor law. And so we're now, and have been for a number of months, in the middle of negotiating collective bargaining agreements. And I have been involved in bargaining with all of the townside negotiations with the townside unions. And consequently, our expenditures for outside counsel for labor and employment, as compared to the prior year, have gone significantly down, because I'm there, I get paid the same salary whether I'm in negotiations or whether I'm attending a ZBA hearing or in court. So we've been able to save money that way. In terms of making a decision about what to refer or take in, it's a function, again, of my background. Wide-ranging background, but there are specialists, for example, in real estate and conservation, who I trust immensely, and we have a wonderful relationship with our special counsel, KP Law. And again, getting back to my point earlier, I feel like the client is best served when you bring that expert in for that specialized area. There are also instances where we have to rely on outside counsel because I'm conflicted out of a matter. And that has happened here, and it's happened elsewhere as well. So in those instances, I'm ethically required to step away and have another attorney handle the matter.
Okay, so the way you're going to do this is you're going to capitalize on the breadth of your expertise to serve Braintree in a wider array of subject areas than we might otherwise be able to do. That's how you're going to meet the goal? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And also to work with our finance director, so that we're periodically looking at the numbers and determining whether maybe it makes sense as we go through FY27 and plan for 28 to examine whether, from a cost effectiveness standpoint, whether it makes sense maybe to bring in a second attorney or a paralegal or someone who can add to the staff, and perhaps when you add up the addition to the staffing, perhaps we're going to spend less than we're spending on me and outside counsel.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Councilor Flaherty. Other questions for Solicitor Rossetti this evening? Councilor Maglio, okay. I also, and thank you, Thank you, Counselor Flaherty. I think the primary concern has been addressed with the outside legal counsel. I have no additional questions either. Anything from you, Director Esmond? You looked
no.
poised. Okay. In that case, I think that we are all set on a blessing and a curse to have a small budget, Solicitor Rossetti. So thank you so much for being here this evening. We appreciate it. And again, thank you for all your work on behalf of the town.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the body. Very much appreciated.
All right. Okay, the next item on this evening's agenda, and I should have mentioned at the outset, we do also have time for general budget discussions on revenues and costs, because we didn't have one-on-one session on that at the with the committee at the beginning of the budget hearing. So we do have time at the end if there are overarching questions. However, before we get to that, we will next head off with municipal licenses and inspections. And thank you so much. We have Director McGrath and our building inspector, Russ Forsberg, here this evening. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here today. Okay, for anybody following along at home, the Municipal Licensing and Inspections Department begins on page 188 of the budget books. And Director McGrath, if you have any opening remarks, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Councilwoman Baraka and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you this evening to review the Department of Municipal Licenses and Inspections FY27 budget submittal. Accompanying me this evening, as you mentioned, is Russell Forsberg, our Inspector of Buildings. As you may be aware, the department consists of the Building and Health divisions. Each division is involved in the oversight of local and state ordinances, codes, rules, and regulations to assist in promoting and preserving the public safety and health of the town's residents and business community. The Building Division oversees the enforcement of the town's general and zoning ordinances, state building, energy, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, gas, accessibility, and weights and measures, codes, rules, and regulations. This is accomplished through permitting and inspectional activities, including construction, alterations, and changes in use of buildings and structures, and assessments of institutional facilities, places of assembly, and commercial and private properties. The Health Division oversees local and state public health and environmental codes, rules, and regulations, which is accomplished through permitting and inspections of a variety of categories, including food establishments, housing, hotels, beaches, recreational camps for children, semi-public swimming pools, body art, vector and animal control, tobacco control, and public health nuisances. The Health Division is also involved in health assessments, education, and prevention, including immunizations, community health, communicable disease surveillance, school health, and substance use prevention programming. I would like to highlight some of the positives that we've seen over this past year. Last year, we reviewed with you the reduced staffing challenges that the department faces in order to continue to provide level services for the community. I'm very happy to advise you that with the assistance of and support of Mayor Aaron Joyce, Chief of Staff Cara Nyman, Finance Director Mike Esmond, and yourselves, the Town Council, the department was able to successfully fulfill FY26 goals in the hiring of a public health nurse and a local building inspector. Both very welcomed additions to the staff and to the town. In her understanding and recognition of the steady and increasing growth of the town, both in residential and commercial activity, Mayor Joyce continues in her efforts to assist us in the FY27 budget to attempt to bring department staffing levels back to those maintained between 1996 through 2017, with another local building inspector and a part-time principal clerk. With the adoption by the Town Council of the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, the department, working in collaboration with other town departments, has permitted the construction of 10 ADUs, with new applications consistently coming in. To assist in the fundamentals of the ADU process, the department will be conducting public symposiums for residents and developers between July of 2026 and June of 2027, in addition to providing guidance information on the town's website. Additionally, in the coming months and year, we will see the continued construction activity of 51 residential units on the former St. Thomas More property located at 338 Elm Street, 31 residential units at 107 Hancock Street. We will see construction activity begin on a 720 residential unit complex at 10 Plain Street, a 350 residential unit complex at 250 Granite Street, a 220 residential unit complex at 60 Columbian Street, the construction of Dick's World of Sports at 250 Granite Street, commercial retail establishments at 125 Union Street, and the possibility of the start of a 78 residential unit Chapter 40B project at 383-385 Washington Street, just to name a few. This construction activity could realize up to several $1 million in building permit revenues. At the direction of the Mayor's Office, to facilitate more effective interdepartmental collaboration with the goal of a more fluid experience for residents, developers, and the business community in the workflow process, the department has been assisting the Town Clerk's Office, the Fire Department, the Department of Public Works, and the Planning Department with the introduction of online permitting software programs. To assist in enhancing department capabilities, Mayor Joyce has approved the implementation of a software module in the Permitized program to digitally capture and document all complaints from receipt to resolution. This module will include the ability to assess fines and to flag residential and/or commercial properties. This mechanism will facilitate greater communication between the Building and Health divisions, resulting in a more effective workflow. The department is also continually involved in researching and applying for grant opportunities. We are currently in year 3 of our 5-year Drug-Free Communities award cycle. The overall grant total for that grant application and award was $625,000, with $125,000 funding it each year. The department applied for and was awarded an 84 movement mini grant to assist with youth involvement in underage tobacco prevention in the amount of $4,000. Through Representative Mark Cusack, the department received legislative earmark funding to support substance use prevention initiatives in the amount of $50,000. The department submitted a joint application with the town of Weymouth for a RISE municipal opioid matching grant for a shared community social worker. This grant assists in providing funding to end the overdose crisis and offer technical support from the state's opioid settlement funds. The application request was for $59,450, but was unfortunately not awarded. The department submitted a Massachusetts Office of Disabilities, or MAUD, Municipal ADA Improvement Grant to request funds for a project grant in the amount of $250,000 for the Winfield Adams Playground improvements. This, unfortunately, was not awarded as well. In closing, I would like to reiterate and offer my appreciation for the very productive and rewarding working relationships that the department maintains with Mayor Joyce and the Mayor's Office, and all town departments, including the Fire Department, the Police Department, the Department of Public Works, the Planning and Community Development Department, and the school departments, who we work very closely with. Lastly, I would be remiss if I did not mention the dedication and commitment of my department staff. Our successes have come in great part due to their hard work on a daily and continual basis. I am very proud to have the opportunity to know and work with them, and I am beyond thankful and grateful for them. Needless to say, I do absolutely know how lucky and blessed I am. We thank you for the opportunity to meet with you this evening, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, McGrath. And I think, we had a conversation last week with the planning director about the volume of projects and new growth that's coming into the town, which is super exciting and so important. and making sure that we are appropriately staffed to take in all of this new development will be critical. And the breadth of work that your department does, I appreciate you going over that, because I think that it's, I certainly didn't even recognize the amount of different elements and departments that your entire team touches. So thank you for preparing that statement. Very, very helpful to start us off. So with that, I will open it up to the committee. Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you. So I don't really know which set of questions I want to start with, but I'm going to start with this one. The Attorney General's office is suing the management of the Skyline Drive over the failure to provide accommodations for accessibility and some discrimination complaints. So I'm curious, like, to what extent does that litigation connect to inspection services that have been provided by this town?
Thank you for that question. To some degree, we are involved on the accessibility component. If it's determined on site for an inspection, it's certainly addressed by our building division. And if we've had difficulty, which we have had some in the past, we have had to reach out to the Attorney General's office to see if they could become involved with assisting us. In this particular case, this is a case brought by the Attorney General's office, and they are overseeing that entire case. The town itself, though, has been actively involved with the Attorney General's office since 2017 on litigation involving sanitary code violations and building code violations with Skyline. The case within the last year has gone from the actual district court setting to what's called a cooperative agreement that has been arranged between the ownership management of Skyline properties as well as the town and the Attorney General's office. This cooperation agreement is basically on a quarterly basis reviewed by both sides. We have meetings and review what the status of everything is and where everything's going to make sure that we're going in a positive movement instead of a negative movement. And to some degree, it's been working very well. We hope to continue in that pattern. As far as this particular case, as I said, it's strictly being overseen by the Attorney General's office. I mean, we're happy to assist them with any questions they may have and so forth on things that they're seeing or they're being made aware of, but they are the ones that have actually brought that case against the ownership management. It's not been the town.
Okay, so you have a cooperative agreement between the town of Braintree, Skyline Management, and the AG's office?
Correct.
And that cooperative agreement reviews, say again what it reviews?
Sanitary code violations, like building code violations, electrical, plumbing, anything that may be associated with actual, the units themselves.
Okay. And you say it's going well. How do you know it's going well?
We are routine, every week we meet with our council to review where we are on any violations and what the status of those violations are. We keep an ongoing spreadsheet of where we are with compliance inspections, any complaints that come in, and continue to update that. Within the cooperation agreement, there is a certain threshold that if it's met, that the violations are outstanding for X number of days. That could throw it into a situation where the town and/or AG could pursue it further in the court system. And Skyline's very aware of that.
Who's conducting the inspections around these violations?
The Building and Health Division staff.
Okay, so how often are you over there?
We are on the property on a routine and continual basis throughout the week. I can't say it's every day, but I could suggest it's probably 2 to 3 days a week at minimum. Would you agree, Russ? Yeah.
Okay, and cumulatively on your spreadsheet, how many violations do you have?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't have that information right in front of me right now. I can certainly get it to you.
Is it tens or hundreds?
It's not hundreds, no. I'm going to suggest it's broken down by unit, so it really depends upon what is in each unit. That's how we have the spreadsheet established. It's by unit and where we're at with each unit. I'm going to say it's definitely probably under 40, But again, that is a guess on my part. I can get information to you, though.
And how long has the cooperative agreement been in place?
It went into effect last year when Judge Coven out of the Quincy District Court dismissed the case with the understanding and acknowledged that it was then rolling into a cooperative agreement between the town and the ownership of Skyline, as well as the Attorney General.
Okay, so the judge dismissed the case on the grounds of this cooperative agreement?
Correct. And there was no requirement on his part that there be a cooperative agreement, but he did feel much more comfortable knowing that he was dismissing the case, knowing that it was going into what we'll call a cooperative agreement.
Okay. And when you began last year, how many violations were in place at their peak? When you started?
When the cooperative agreement started, or
Yes.
during the course of the
So
entire?
you had a spreadsheet, and you've been
Yeah.
ticking things off?
Yeah.
What was it at the beginning?
In 2017?
No.
Okay.
When the cooperative agreement began?
Okay, so I'm going to say it was definitely, it absolutely was definitely under 100. Judge Coven would never have dismissed it if there were that many open violations. I'm going to suggest it was probably under 50. Again, I'd have to get that information going back.
So you've maybe checked off like 10?
Yeah, I mean, we continually do compliance inspections, and then as things are corrected, they're removed from the spreadsheet. We could get a complaint on another unit, then the spreadsheet number may go up because of what's observed on the
Have additional
violation.
complaints come in since the cooperative agreement came into play?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Have additional complaints come in since the cooperative agreement was
Oh, absolutely.
established?
Yeah, we are routinely receiving complaints on that property.
From Skyline? So is the cooperative agreement then having impact if the violations persist?
I would say that the speed in which the corrections are occurring has definitely improved because of the cooperation agreement.
I mean,
So
in
the
an ideal
violations
world, we
aren't
wouldn't,
staying as outstanding as long as they had been.
but I think that the aim of the cooperative agreement is to cure the complaints
Correct.
that are in place. And also, because of its existence and the increased aggressiveness of addressing the complaints, it should, if it's really working, it should reduce the number of complaints to, there should be none, because the consequences are too great for the management to deal with. They would rather address the concern to begin with without involving the town.
Right, certainly we would love for that to happen, but realistically, on a property that size, or any property of that size, which we have many complexes that have a large number of dwelling units in them, it's not unusual or unexpected that there will be properties that have violations. This particular cooperative agreement, as I said, there are certain thresholds. If it reaches or goes over a certain threshold, that provides the ability for the town of Braintree to then proceed into the housing court without any jeopardy to that cooperative agreement. If it reached a threshold, we would be proceeding into the Canton District Court where the housing court is. At this point, since the cooperative agreement's been put into place, that has not happened.
Okay. And when you say complaints, do you mean complaints from residents going to management and you're overseeing management's addressing those complaints? Or do you mean complaints are coming in from residents who have concerns about the maintenance of their property that the management's not addressing, and so they're coming to you to force management to address it?
What I would say is the complaints that we receive are from residents. I can't always say that they do or do not go to management. We would hope that they would bring concerns that they may be experienced to management so that they're made aware of it. When we receive a complaint, we investigate it. If there are violations, and we have to verify whether or not the violations exist. When the inspection is done, if there are violations that are determined, a housing order is issued, and then the process of correction of the violations begins. The property management ownership is noticed on that notice of violation, and then there are prescribed timeframes that they are supposed to meet in correction. So that's what, as far as the residents, what their manner and mechanism is to relay a concern to the property management and ownership. Again, we encourage that they reach out to the property management ownership, not just for this property, but any property, to make them aware. It's always a lot easier if the ownership management of any property is aware of a concern so they can begin corrective action if it's necessary, as opposed to them not knowing about it, waiting to contact us, or if there's a delay in contacting us for whatever reason, and us getting out on site, then to initiate whatever corrective action may be if it's necessary.
So there's a mechanism for residents to contact you with concerns, like my plumbing's not working, and then they may not have addressed that issue to management because their faith in management's willingness to deal with it at all is that low?
Well, it's been my experience and my staff's experience that sometimes the residents are not always comfortable going to the ownership management. I can't say that, for every resident, but.
So that's a serious problem. If the housing in the town that is subsidized in some manner, and people live there and they don't feel comfortable going to management, how do we correct that issue? Because we don't have the capacity to be management of Skyline. So how do we address that?
I agree with you. One of the reasons, again, that we are, we're merged into a case with the Attorney General's office because we were experiencing difficulties in getting violations corrected. The Attorney General's office has an open communication with residents that are experiencing any concerns, including of that nature, to be able to contact them. They have many divisions within the Attorney General's office. We specifically work on this case in what's called the, oh my gosh, it just left my head. The, I believe it's the Urban Renewal Division of the, it's a Housing Urban Renewal Division. There are other entities, as you had mentioned in the lawsuit that was filed, like the Civil Rights Division. There are other entities that can also step in to assist any residents that may be experiencing difficulties like this.
Okay, so I'm sure that the new inspector that we have brought on is helpful with all of these inspections. Can you talk about like how that, in the addition of this new member of your team has, helped the backlog that you're dealing with and other issues around the office?
Yeah. We're happy to report that Lisa started on board with us on December 1st, and as I said, she's been a really welcomed addition. I'm going to also ask Russ to chime in on this because he works directly with Lisa on a day-to-day basis as far as assignments and so forth. Why don't I go ahead and do that, and then I can also make a comment.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to...
I'm sorry, Mr. Forsberg. Did you have a point of clarification?
Yeah, just a quick question. So are you asking about health inspections or building inspections or both?
So I was thinking about building inspections because I thought the inspector that we brought on was a building inspector.
Correct.
Counselor. Continue, Mr. Forsberg. Thank you.
Thank you. So with the addition of Inspector Bezanson, we've been able to more speedily and readily respond to complaints, to inspection requests, and to start the process of eliminating the open permit backlog. One concern that the real estate and finance community has with respect to the transfer of properties, the sale and purchase of properties, is that they are reluctant to do so when there are open permits. So one of the tasks we've set Inspector Bezanson towards is to begin the review of these open permits and being able to close them out wherever possible as speedily as possible. It's our hope that, I believe it's actually one of the goals outlined in our budget proposal, is to hopefully by December of this coming year to achieve somewhere in the order of about 50% of the open permits having been closed out or otherwise ended in some fashion. There are times when people will pull a building permit and never do the work for what reason or the other. And so, again, we'll go out there initially, we'll evaluate to see if, in fact, the work's been done, and if so, If it's something on the exterior, we can readily inspect that and close it out. If not, if it involves the interior of a property, for instance, then we'd be making contact with the contractor and the homeowner to determine what the level of completion was, and if in fact it was completed, to go out there and make, final inspection, be able to close it out. So the additional inspector, like I said, is helping us in that respect greatly, because again, that benefits everyone, so that if, someone's going to sell their home, they're not, experiencing a fact where they discover there's open permits where, for the failure of the contractor to contact us, they were never closed. Beyond that, especially where we're coming into, as this council has been made aware of through the Planning and Community Development Department, we're coming into the beginning of a lot of these large-scale projects there. We've been able to, again, better address the inspection needs of the community, as well as addressing the multitude of other things that the department is tasked with in terms of code compliance for various, complaints that the department receives. So it's been a very productive and very welcome change.
Okay, so does closing out these open permits, does that usually require an inspection?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a goal about closing out these, this backlog, and now you have an inspector to help you reach that goal. And you also have so much new building coming online that also is going to need to be inspected. And I guess what I don't totally understand is on page 198, you talk about the targets that you have for your inspections, but all the numbers are lower. Like in FY25, you did 626 food established inspections, but you're only targeting 500.
Are you speaking about building or health?
Okay, so on 198,
198.
it talks about food established inspections, which is health, but then there's housing inspections, which would be building, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 600 is the target, but in FY25, we did 829, and in FY24, there were 756. What I'm trying to understand is you have a new inspector to do the inspections, you have the inspections to close out, or the permits that you want to close out, which requires an inspection, but your numbers are lower than they've ever been in the past.
So just for clarification, on the goals, the metrics for the building division are on page 193. Those are the metrics for the health division.
Okay. So maybe I'm just looking at the wrong metrics. There's, yes, please.
So not to get off the building department, then so housing inspections is a health inspection issue?
For the most part, yes, if it involves a sanitary code violation or something of that nature, but
Like
there's so much
hoarding or
crossover
something?
for, a housing inspection. If we go out to do a housing inspection and we notice that there could be a building code, electrical issue, plumbing, and gas issue, then we're bringing in our inspectors to also be involved in that process.
I think, I totally understand. Thank you for clarifying that. I think just for those of us who aren't steeped in this day in and day out, so what would constitute, is it like I'm concerned my neighbor is hoarding and that would trigger, is that like what kind of inspections are housing inspections? I'm not familiar with that,
So just to use
Okay,
your
yeah.
example, if
Is
we were
that-
to receive a complaint about a concern of a hoarding situation, I mean, oftentimes maybe we've received contact from the fire department. They've responded to a medical or emergency call.
Got it.
They determine a concern in the dwelling unit. They contact us immediately to respond on site. And then normally it's not only contacting the health department or the health division, but also the building division, because
Okay.
it may impact both. It could impact structural, but clearly also sanitary code issues involved with hoarding.
Okay, thank
So
you.
there's so much overlap on both division.
That's helpful, hopefully. for
The
you
other
too,
thing I did want to
Counselor.
mention too, and to follow up on Russ's statement about going through the open or outstanding open permits, is once those are able to be finalized and closed out, then all of that information is made available to our assessor's office for review by Patriot Properties and the Assessors Division as far as the tax piece.
Carry on, Counselor.
Okay, so now I'm looking on page 193, which I think is the right page to be looking at. But even still, like the number of building permits that you expect in FY '27 is still 35 less than were done in '25. And we're in the second quarter of '26, we're still 60 permits ahead of that. So like, why are we going down when we have the capacity to go up? And more projects coming.
I'm going to
yeah.
ask Mike Esmond to help us with this, because when we were calculating these, when we were calculating these metrics and they were being, reviewed, we were not completed with FY '26. So, and Mike, you can help me with this, how we arrived at that number. I know that it was a different number, and based upon what the determination was as to how we calculated, knowing that we're offering a number that, as of today, may not be accurate because we haven't completed the year fiscal '26. So,
yeah, so this is, it's often, you can see where we indicated second quarter, and we footnoted other folks. What we tried to do is ask folks to provide an annualized projection based on the most contemporaneous data they had at the time of us developing the budget. So it may be the case that we might have just doubled the number in order to get an annualized number. It may be the case if there's some seasonality that could be accounted for. So the 26 numbers, I guess to that point, in this book are definitely not actuals, and in some cases they're projections that could have deviate meaningfully from where we will end the year. But we have asked departments to try to give some basis of comparison from a year-to-year basis.
So, I'm just, if you don't mind, Counselor, I'll just jump in here. So, setting aside the digits, what we're asking about is the trend, because we've got more projects coming online and more humans to do the inspections. But the way that these metrics are trended out, whether it's 35 or 60 or whatever, we're declining. So I'm struggling here to understand why we're projecting fewer building permits, electrical permits, plumbing, maybe not plumbing, building permits, electrical permits, and slightly fewer gas permits than gas, maybe because we're moving up, or maybe we're electrifying more. But let's just stick with building. Keep it simple. Why would we be projecting fewer building permits in FY '27 than the prior 3 years?
This is just, again, based on the empirical information we had at the time that we submitted the budget proposal. Again, to Director Esmond's point, it might not be that case, and in all likelihood it is not. But the other thing to remember is this, and I understand when you're talking about the allocation of resources, personnel, that sort of thing there. What we're coming into is a period of unprecedented growth in the town of Braintree relative to at least the 8 or 9 large-scale residential projects, which will take a disproportionate amount of resources away from the Department of Inspections because of the sheer volume that we're dealing with. You might be getting one building permit for a project, for instance. However, that is not indicative of the time that's going to be spent on that particular project in terms of inspections and review and any other functions that the department undertakes. So again, as we come into this, for the next at least 3 years, if not longer, we're going to be, to my knowledge, I've been here since '96. And when I came in, I actually was brought in to the department because of the expansion of the South Shore Plaza and the recognized need for additional staffing at that point. That pales in comparison to what the town will be experiencing, again, over the next 3 years relative to these developments. And again, it's not the sheer numbers, it's just what resources will have to be allocated in support of those very important projects for the town.
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand this then. Are you telling us that you are not going to have sufficient staff to meet or exceed the number of building permits that we've seen over the last 3 years?
No, the number of permits is independent of staffing levels.
Okay, so are you saying we're going to have fewer building permits in '27 than we've seen in the previous 3 years?
Again, based upon the metrics that we were using at the time we created this, that could change tomorrow, and we might see an upward trend greater. The other thing to consider is the fact that in past years, obviously, the economy has been at a different level, okay? And we have seen through other communities and discussions with them, as prices of construction material gets more expensive, as general expenses become more and more expensive, you tend to get a slight downturn in the overall development or redevelopment of properties.
Okay. We don't need to belabor this because I think we've made the point, but I'm really struggling with how we're increasing and hoping to increase ADUs, which all need permits. Director McGrath very eloquently laid out at least close to 2,000 new homes that were, or new units that are going to be built, whether commercial or residential, new properties. So I think where I'm struggling is, like, this is what we and the public have to go on, right? And so if it's like a best guess based on what we just know without being in the department day in and day out, it doesn't make sense that we're trending down when we've heard from you and all the other departments that growth is expanding. So that's all. Like, it doesn't jive with any of the other information that we have. So I will leave it at that, and we can figure out if that needs to be revisited or if the mayor is satisfied with that as the trend.
Yeah, so I can actually offer, I have the report in front of me. Total number of building permits have been issued, or permits issued through the building division between July 1st, 2025 and April 30th, 26 are 1,313 building permits, 295 gas permits, 617 plumbing permits, and 747 electrical permits. That's through April 30th.
So of 26, April 30th of 26.
Correct.
So they went down from is the second quarter, those numbers weren't, this was done before the second quarter closed out?
This was as of the second quarter annualized. So data through the second quarter, essentially, then you would then project
And then you
it.
expanded it out to annualize it?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, well, I think my comment still is valid, but thank you for that explanation. All right, I'm sorry, Councilor Flowery, go ahead.
I'm still working through it. But are you saying that not all permits take the same amount of time?
That's correct. So a project such as what we see at the old electric light plant on Allen Street takes a disproportionate amount of time based upon its volume, as opposed to a conventional permit that might be for a residential property improvement.
So is it that you're anticipating that the kind of projects coming in this coming year are the sorts of projects that take longer to permit, so you have fewer permits that you're going to issue even though you have more people to issue them and do the work?
No, that's not the case at all. The number of permits that we anticipate received is independent upon the staffing levels. When I say the number of permits that persons outside are going to be filing is independent. So we might have just myself there, and we might have 1,700 anticipated permits. coming in. One does not factor into the other. We don't tell people you cannot file an application for permit based upon staffing levels, nor do we necessarily delay the processing of those applications either. This is simply a forecast based upon certain metrics that we were able to look back at and say, we think this would be the number that we'll realize.
Yes. So what I'm going to try one more time to understand. Why are you forecasting fewer?
Again, this is just the trend that we have seen this past year. And so again, without it showing market increase, we don't want to falsely project an increase in the overall permitting. So maybe we're kind of lowballing our estimate here. But, again, we feel that would be around the number. And again, we're not talking an appreciable decline in overall permitting.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. If it's Counselor Sterling, go right ahead.
Just some quick ones, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here and for your opening remarks. Appreciate it, as always. I just had some quick questions on the budget. I know that we just discussed and you talked about the new hire as one building inspector. So in the salary line, I believe that is, in the inspector code enforcement, is that salary for the inspectors, is that just for the 2 inspectors that we currently have, or is that for a potential additional inspectors that will be posted and hoped for? So on page 21, sorry, 511009, I could be in the wrong spot, but I'm just, of the line item, yes, correct, sorry, general fund line item detail. Just I know you were mentioning that you wanted, the goal was to potentially get another inspector and the clerk. So is that in this FY27 budget, the potential of to hire additional inspectors?
An additional building inspector, yes. So you can see the FY26 came in, for the inspector's line item, came in at 387,505. In the FY27, the proposed is 478,043. So that would include the building inspector. As far as the principal clerk, working with the mayor, Chief of Staff Nyman, and Director Esmond, I had to get creative, knowing that I'm going to need some more administrative support staff, and I do have a public health and immunization revolving account that I'm going to be attempting to hire a part-time principal clerk under that revolving account. So that will come from that revolving account and hopefully be maintained for as long as I'm able to.
Thank you. And on that note, so right now, you have 2 full-time inspectors hoping to hire the 3rd, correct?
Correct.
All right. Do you have a timeline on when that would be posted with all the building we hope to have coming online?
As early as July 1st, if possible.
Okay. And do we have, at this time, any part-time inspectors assisting in the work that needs to be done by the inspectors?
We have we have an alternate building, we have an alternate electrical, and we have an alternate plumbing and gas inspector. Those individuals simply come in to provide coverage when the full-time staff is, for example, on vacation or out on leave. They don't perform daily functions in addition to the full-time staff that's in place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Sterling. Do you mind if I ask one follow-up question, Counselor Magley, and then I'll turn it over to you? I just want to touch back on Counselor Flaherty's the line of questioning regarding Skyline. Who is paying for our inspectors' time to go over there multiple times per week? Is Skyline paying for that?
Town of Braintree. It's part of our inspectional duties.
So we have zero recourse with the Skyline properties for recouping our town staff time because their management is in violation of codes?
That I would suggest be referred to legal counsel as to what can and can't be done as far as recouping funds in this agreement. I really couldn't answer that question.
Clerk Smino, do you mind if we take that as a follow-up for Solicitor Rossetti? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, unfortunately, he went first, so now we'll have to wait to get that answer. Counselor Maglio?
Thank you. Thank you for being here, both of you, and of course, Director Esmond. Might as well start with a couple of quick Skyline questions then. So how is it that we are finding violations and not actually enforcing them when they are ignored to the extent that we have to be in court with them for year after year?
Well, we're not ignoring violations. The orders are issued.
No, not us. How is it that we are not enforcing violations and fines? When they are in violation of something, what is the remedy to get them to correct what the situation is?
When they're in violation, an order to correct is issued, and we progressively continue to review that order to correct to see where it is as far as compliance. I mean, the owner management has to notify us when they've met compliance on those. The nice thing about the cooperation agreement and our weekly meetings with our town solicitor or our counsel on it is that we're reviewing what the status is on a weekly basis internally between the department and our legal counsel.
Okay, so I would say that there's not a lot of nice things about the cooperation agreement as someone who sat in on those court hearings for years. I would say that the cooperation agreement let a lot of people off the hook, that many of the violations that were in place are still in place, which is why there's another case. So the women and the families and the individuals that are listed in the current case from the other division of the Attorney General's were part of all the complaints that were ongoing. There's one woman that's been living there for 50 years and has been waiting to get new carpet. I mean, there are absolutely egregious conditions that people have had to live under, and we are aware of those because we were in court for all those years. Our inspectors were on site making those inspections, and I do want to say for the record that every time I speak to someone from Skyline, they know two of our health inspectors by name and absolutely love them because they are kind. They haven't solved their issues. We haven't, as a town, solved their issues. As a department, their issues have not been resolved. So these folks who are living in conditions that are violations of the law, that are documented, that are raised in court, that are photographed, that are described, and that are now the basis of another court case, were never resolved. So why are we writing violations if we're not enforcing anything and then agreeing to a cooperation agreement when those violations are still in place?
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for your kind words about my inspectors. I completely agree with you. And, you know, there are a lot of wonderful families that live at Skyline, generational families. They've been there for years. And it's important to us that we're doing everything that we can to try and assist them.
What is that we're doing?
But if I may, to state that we're not doing enforcement, we are doing enforcement. Some of the violations that, as I said, in this cooperation agreement, there are certain thresholds that have to be met. One is like, what is the time frame that a violation is existing? Is it 5 days? Is it 10 days? Where it is. That's part of the threshold piece, that if it exceeds a certain number of days that it has not, compliance has not been achieved, that could trigger going into court. And that's an ability that we have. We haven't met those thresholds yet to have to go to the next level of going into court. So to state that, I mean, as far as the AG's case on the specific suit that was filed yesterday, an individual that may have a need to, I'm going to just use this as an example, that may have a need, a medical need to have carpet replaced does not necessarily mean that that carpet is a sanitary code violation. It's a need through their, you know, potential medical that necessitates them maybe having to go to the extent of pursuing that request. It does not mean that it's necessarily a sanitary code violation, which if it wasn't, then we wouldn't be citing a sanitary code violation.
It's a health violation.
I'm not saying that it's not a health violation in the sense that it could be a medical concern, but if, for example, if the carpet's if it's ripped, or that could be a sanitary code violation, requiring whatever necessary action needs to be taken. If a person, for example, like I have allergies, if I had a situation that like carpet is not conducive to helping with my condition, I seek that necessity through my physician to have the carpet replaced. That does not necessarily mean it would rise to the level of it being a sanitary code violation.
Okay, let's roll it back a second. The amount of time that you just described that health inspectors are spending writing up inspection reports and violations. So we're talking violations. They're not resolved. So then what happens? Do they just keep writing up violations?
Depending upon the situation, if we find additional violations,
Not
then we're
additional.
documenting them. Then we're documenting them.
Not additional. Let's say their door, they can't get into their bathroom door has warped from mold, let's say. And they call and say, listen, I can't shut the door. I've got, there's privacy issues. I'm getting sick from the mold. I mean, these are real complaints that happen all the time.
I agree with you.
And so when someone is on year 3 of a moldy bathroom, or as in this case that was brought yesterday, or in the case that was before the Quincy court, when they are in these situations and it's not being addressed, what weight is there behind our violations that we issue?
The remedy would be taking it into the housing court and bringing it
about a
before a
fine?
judge.
Last year, we heard a lot about the fines that we impose. What about the fines?
Well, the fines that were imposed is if they're failing inspections, they're being fined. If we have to do
Aren't they failing?
re-inspections,
So if there's a violation, that's not considered failing an inspection?
it could be and would result in inspectors
let's
having
say
to go
it
back.
is.
So they're being charged for that, for
What are
re-inspections.
they being charged?
$50 every time they have to go back.
Okay,
for
and so can
re-inspection.
we get a report, please, of the revenue of all of the fines for all of the violations that we have heard about the amount of hours, the amount of visits, the weekly meetings, the review of the spreadsheet, the visits on site, the court meetings, the Zoom meetings, and everything else? How much, with that kind of time that's being spent, what are those fines bringing in for all of those violations that are existing, proven, documented, demonstrated, that the same people are calling repeatedly for the same things? Or maybe not. Maybe there's only one, they're calling for one thing, maybe it's the person calling for 5 different things, but all of those things that the town is spending personnel and other resources. For example, the violations. How are those violations? My understanding is that someone stands at the post office every week for a couple of hours also, going through these triplicate copies, and they're getting, or they're sent certified mail. What is that, $15 a pop or something? Like, what are we getting? So their situations aren't being resolved. We're not charging back any time. And yet we agreed to a cooperation agreement. I need those dots connected.
Council, can I
Sure.
sort of dovetail off of that for 1 second? Because one of my questions that I had, if you don't mind, if
I do not mind.
following up on Councilor Maglio's question regarding how permit and code compliance violations are pursued outside of this. This is a very specific property that we are all upset about. But if we set that aside, I think one of the things we had talked about last year was how the code compliance violations are pursued, and then how the fines are collected, issued, and the amount that is collected. I think I'd sent this, hopefully you got this question ahead of time. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that will help address some of those or hopefully $50 doesn't seem sufficient, so maybe part of the thing is we need to raise the fines, but if you can elucidate on that.
So that when the department receives complaints, they can be in any number of formats through the See-Click-Fix portal, telephone calls, office visits, email communications, and often as well through the mayor's office. The department, whichever division that may be, would perform a site inspection of the property in question to determine the validity of the complaint. If a notice of violation is necessary, if there are violations that are determined, then a notice of violation is issued to the property owner, which can include the intimation that fines could be assessed as well as legal action in a court of law. As far as fines being collected at this point, for example, I'll use the anti-blight, there's no mechanism for us to be able to collect those fines. We don't have a mechanism in place to collect it.
What does that mean?
We can issue the fines, but they don't go anywhere. There's no mechanism to collect those fines. We could work with our treasurer collector to see if there's an ability, if they don't pay those fines, to lien it against the property.
Excuse me. Hold on, Counselor. Let me follow up with this.
It is about this.
I know. All right. Wait a second. We are issuing, are you telling me we're issuing citations and violations, including the anti-blight ordinance, which has a fine mechanism of, I think it's $300 per violation per day, that we don't have any way of collecting?
For the anti-blight, we don't.
What? How
Through
is
the
that?
town. Right, yeah. Short of
Wait.
taking it into court and pursuing it on a court level, which then the court collects the fine.
Okay, so we have the treasurer here. I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. Why would we, wow, we don't have ways to collect fines. How is that possible? We can't go get a check from someone, we can't put a lien on the property, we can't take a credit card? You might not know the answer, but like, this is nuts.
Yeah. So, I mean, the individual, they have to pay it. If they don't pay it, then there's only two mechanisms for us to try and pursue. See if the treasurer collector would take a lien against the property based on that outstanding fee, or take it into the court setting and ask a judge to make sure that it's received. That does not necessarily mean that the judge, in a lot of cases, they will receive the money on the court end. It doesn't come back to the town.
Okay, but we do have a mechanism that we can pursue, which is, you know, I can think of many properties off the top of my head that have either had blight ordinances slapped on them or should. So we're choosing not to follow through with said compliance effort. We're choosing to either not put a lien on the property or not take the property owner, whether it's Skyline or otherwise, to court.
Well, we need to have a mechanism with our treasurer collector to be able to put it into a lien situation, and our treasurer collector can speak more to how that process works. I don't know. As far as we are not choosing not to do anything. The objective is to seek compliance for the property. And one thing I do want to say is, at least the anti-blight ordinance, in my understanding of it, it was not meant to be a revenue source. It was meant to be a compliance tool. And I believe that's still the case.
Well,
Our overarching, you know, we recognize and want compliance to be achieved, not trying to just seek fines on it. Even, you know, they can pay a fine, but that doesn't mean it's going to be corrected. We want the item or issue corrected.
Agreed.
Certainly a fine can be an incentive to that, but they can just continue to pay the fines
But
and not correct the violation.
In that case, I would argue that the fines aren't high enough because people vote with their wallet, right? So if this, I think, probably begs a separate hearing on how we're going to collect fines, because this is kind of shocking. I'm certainly surprised, and I'm sorry to hear that, but I'll leave it at that. Did you have anything else, Counselor?
So I'd like to jump into that because I think it was 2 years ago you said that fines are not considered revenue generators. And then last year, you brought a list of what the fines were. So is it that they're not revenue generators, or they're not high enough, or we don't collect them, or there's no mechanism, at which time you've never said that there's really no mechanism, you just said that you don't really collect them. So I would ask for, yes, a hearing specifically on this process. Also, I want to talk a little bit about the idea that the idea of compliance. So there's a business in my district that has that received a blight letter after years of requests and asking, but it took law. So there is a law, there's an ordinance that, and the blight letter was sent. It took them over 1.5 years to barely address part of the problem. And then continued, so I'd like to hear how our system is working, if that's how, if that's the system, because that doesn't really feel like compliance.
Well, one thing that I will say is that, and I mentioned this in my opening statement, is that with the mayor's approval, she has approved a digital platform for us to pursue it's a complaint module. And so that would provide us the ability to be able to track a complaint from its receipt through its resolution, including the ability to be able to assess fines right through that system. So we're looking forward to that because it will certainly help us. Now everything's done manually. The staff are, individually working on their cases and trying to process those through, and everything's done manually.
Okay, so we might as well jump over to that because that was the next thing. Unless somebody else wants to, you want to jump in? Because then I do have a lot of questions.
So Counselor Reynolds, then Counselor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do have some questions, but I'd also like to make, and I don't know if this is the proper how to do this, but I'd like to make a motion for us this committee to study or to have a hearing at some point about how fines are collected, or what are the impediments or the changes the town would need to pursue in order to bring a more effective process in place. And this certainly is not a judgment on, or passing judgment on the way that the process of the building and inspections work, or any department works. This is something that is just, I'd have to agree, is a little bit mind-boggling to think that the laws don't allow the town to enforce our codes in a meaningful way. And I agree with you, Director, in terms of we're not here to try to generate revenue, but we do need to have the incentives to enforce and to give those incentives to the parties who we are fining and posting our violations against. So.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. Clerk Semino, can we get this as a referral then at the next committee meeting if it pleases the President? Okay, thank you. That way, let's move on because thank you, Counselor. I think this begs a better.
Unless you want to continue,
Well,
I can wait.
You can ask yours, then Counselor Flaherty, then we'll go back to Counselor Maglio.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, thank you, and welcome here. My apologies for my late delay. I had a conflict in getting here this evening, and I don't think this question has been asked, but I know that we find ourselves in a period of some elevated construction, development, however you want to call it, and a good number of those projects are housing related, and some of them are pretty significant in size. So I do know that building inspections department has been very challenged with personnel, being able to hire a proper amount of personnel. So one of the things that I'm investigating, because this is something that's come to my attention recently, is in light of that fact that we don't have we don't have a full measure of inspectors to really, in a timely manner, do all the work that you need to do with all of these projects. It's just you don't have the capacity. So you work as fast as you can. But help is what I'm getting at here. And there's a process, I believe, through the state that we can condition in some of these larger projects to have the developer pay for an inspector. Is this something, I'll put the question to you, Mr. Forsberg, or you, Ms. McGrath. Have you heard this as well, or do you know anything about this?
Yes, not unlike projects in the past that you may have been here for, there have been conditions set by the town to assist in either personnel matters or equipment or the like. One that comes to mind was Dave & Buster's, for instance. I believe that the town received an additional patrol car as a result of that because of the anticipated increase in activity surrounding, the general area there. So yeah, it's not unknown, but we've not actually pursued that in terms of our requests as a result of these projects. That's not to suggest we couldn't be doing that, but we haven't, as of this particular point, done that.
Okay, and I want to be clear that it would be the high temporary for the duration of the project, and not necessarily we're asking them to fund a position, full-time position in the inspectional services department that would only be funded by the developer for the duration of the project until the as-built process. And then the town would be on the hook to maintain that position going forward. What I'm suggesting, and I think you took it as such, it's just as they would pay for a temporary inspector that would be under supervision of the inspectional department and be independent of the developer. The developer would only pay for that position.
Right. But the thing to keep in mind here is this, is that with each development's eventual completion, what have you there, we also see an increase in activity in terms of required inspections going on after that. I'll cite two of our developments here in town, one being the Ridge at Blue Hills, one being Lenox Farms. This has been a particularly difficult winter for both properties in that they suffered some fairly substantial water damage on a continual basis. So with the addition of these housing complexes, and through no fault of design or development or anything along those lines there, invariably we see an increase in resource allocation to those larger projects, only for the fact that inevitably you're going to suffer leakage, frozen pipe, any number of problems. And it doesn't have to be, years down the line. So I would anticipate, while I agree with you, Councilor, relative to them paying for that, just so the town is aware that with this increase in units, okay, not just on the building side, but on the health/housing side as well, we're going to see an increase in volume of, I'll use the term complaints, but needed responses to those locations. And not everything is a complaint. Sometimes it just comes in from facilities of those developments to us saying, hey, we experience X, Y, or Z. We need to have eyes on this. We need to know how the town wants us to proceed in the remedy of these situations. Because sometimes it involves the relocation of a tenant, for instance, within a space, what have you there, or other things. So again, they rely upon the town to, respond to and to give them counsel as to what, is the best method to address these things. So again, while I agree with you in terms of construction, the long-term effect will be that we will see an increase in volume in either, quote, complaints or necessary responses to these facilities as a result.
So you've articulated two needs, two scenarios where we could utilize a process such as I've described and that you've just further articulated. And let's take that second scenario that you described. I think it's my understanding would be correct in saying that a large facility, a housing facility, apartment facility, encounters a large-scale problem from a water damage, a roof, things of that nature that has really spread out in the building to the point where now they're reaching out to the town to say, listen, we're going to need you to give us some guidance on what it is we need to do, how quickly we need to do it, because I would think then, and this is my main point, is that lenders or whomever who are in business with the property owners, or even the insurance companies themselves, I should say, more likely, would need a sign-off legitimized by the town's building inspectors. So it benefits them to have somebody address their needs in a more timely manner, in a more efficient manner. And so I would think then that gives itself to us an opportunity to negotiate, to create some kind of mechanism the town could utilize. But that's going to take some discussion based on some of the things that you've said. Let's have a discussion about this. It's going to involve a few different departments, the mayor's office, the planning, development, the building inspectors, et cetera. I would love to see something like that be initiated for this town, for us to be able to aid our building departments, and it's going to have a widespread benefit if we do somehow find a way to augment your team.
Right. And the other thing I'd just like to make mention, and this is not something that I've not been vocal on in the past, is that much like with our skilled trades persons, I'm sure you've seen the news reports about how we're losing a lot of these skilled trades persons. There's fewer and fewer as they age out. Much like that with the inspections, not just unique to building, but others too. It's becoming increasingly difficult to find persons willing to take on these jobs, and we're not the only town, obviously, that is experiencing that. During COVID, we lost a good deal of locally, when I say locally, I'll qualify that, on the South Shore, of these inspectors that were of a certain age and just did not want to run the risk of contracting COVID, and decided going into individuals' houses just wasn't for them any longer. That has not improved in terms of right now, for instance, and again, not to cast aspersions, right now, the town of Weymouth has 2 inspectors, one of which is 80, one of which is in their late 70s, that are the primary responders to their needs. They've just appointed a new commissioner. But when I tell you this, it's not just Braintree, it's every community. And I meet with these folks on a monthly basis, and I don't see them getting younger, and I don't see them successfully bringing in folks. And so that's obviously a concern. Part-time, temporary, or any other. So again, that's a situation that not just Braintree, but other communities are going to be facing in terms of the staffing of these going forward.
Got it. And there's some ideas that are bubbling up in my mind now as you're speaking. I'd love to have a conversation about this and see if we could initiate something through the mayor's office for at least a discussion for us to identify possible augmentation solutions to your teams. It's going to be a widespread benefit, anything that we can do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Flaherty?
Thank you. So I just want to ask about the fees for violations. Are these fines, are these set by the town, or are they set by the law, state law?
So certain fines are carried in the town, either general ordinances or zoning bylaws. There are certain fines associated with that. I believe Chairperson Barricade indicated that the anti-blight ordinance carries a $300 per day per violation fine. Generally, in the zoning ordinances, I believe it's $100 per day per violation. There are other fines which come from the state, which can be found, for instance, in the state building code, okay, which carries a certain value. They don't affix a number to it. They give you a range in which to operate in. So they're not strictly state. They're not strictly federal. They're a combination of local and state.
Okay. So to the extent that we have control over the fines that are imposed, however ineffectively, against violators, a couple of years ago, we did a study of fees for municipal services and permits that we wanted to know what we know what Braintree's charging, what are other towns in our area are also charging, and let's bring ours into alignment, because ours were low. So we raised them up, and now they're in alignment. And I think that in advance of this hearing that we're talking about, what I would like to request is for the fines that we do have control over, how do those align with area fines? Because we have to be using them to compel intransigent property owners to maintain their property in accordance with the law and also in the best interest of our community. And I would suggest that like $50, if that's not in our control, then we don't have control. But if it is, that's just radically insufficient to compel any kind of corporation to do anything. That's like, I think I've gotten parking tickets higher than that. I think if my daughter didn't clean her room and I wanted to compel her to clean her room, I would charge her $50. Like, it's just inadequate. So, so I want to know how we do in comparison to surrounding areas and measure ourselves against that. Thank you.
I would respond to that by saying that in consultation with other communities, this is not a unique problem to Braintree. It's one that's faced by many municipalities in terms of the collection of fees or fines, I should say, imposed by regulatory agencies such as building or health departments and the like. So it's not unique to Braintree. Councillor, you brought up a great point, a parking ticket, for instance. The incentive there is that you cannot renew your license if you have a ticket outstanding through the Registry of Motor Vehicles. They'll make you go back to that municipality and pay that fine. That's the sort of mechanism, if you really want to have an effective measure of code compliance, that's the type of mechanism you'd have to do. I don't know if that's possible. I am certain it's not possible that we could actually prohibit the renewal of someone's driver's license, if they didn't pay a municipal citation or fine outside of, let's say, a speeding ticket or a parking ticket or like that. And the other thing too is, if in fact we go the route of the lien, we might not realize that money for a long time.
Mr. Ford, thank you, Mr. Forsberg. Let's move on from this since we're going to have a whole separate hearing on it. Did you have anything else, Councillor Flaherty?
No, that was my
Okay.
main question. Thank you.
Councillor Sterling, anything else? Councillor Maglio?
Yes, thank you. So, a couple of questions. How many inspections do you do, would you say, a year, Mr. Forsberg? And I'm wondering how many health inspections you might do, Director McGrath?
How many do I do?
Yeah.
What does the department do?
Do you do? Like, are you, both of you out there doing health inspections and building inspections?
Councillor, just use your microphone.
I'm so sorry, yes.
I think it's on page, is it on page 198?
Not the department, I'm just wondering, are both
I'm
of
sorry.
you part of the inspections that take place? Are you doing them?
Russ performs inspections on a daily basis throughout the year. I am there to help support staff, not necessarily as building inspector, but on the health side, yes.
And do you go out and do health inspections?
If as necessary, and if necessary, yes.
How often?
I'm not going to say it's a routine matter, but I do go out, it can, I follow up with staff on, I may accompany them on inspections. I will do food inspections at temporary events.
So are you, so both of you have the credentials to go out and do those inspections?
Correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to kind of understand that. So I think that maybe I would want to add to the hearing that we're talking about is the numbers aren't really making sense to me, because that would mean if you're out doing inspections every day, then that's at least, 200. So then that's 200 of this number. And yet the numbers are going down, as Councillor Flaherty had raised. Also, we're looking to bring in more staff. So I'm not really sure what the more staff is if the numbers are going down. So I just want to see the paper trail that would document what exactly is happening up until this point, what's going to happen in the future, and how we're going to achieve whatever numbers we're going to achieve. So I would note that for the hearing. Now, to talk about the inspections and activity volume, the average time from complaint filed to inspection completed, I'm just going to go through very quickly the feedback to our questions. You mentioned the resolution of complaints vary. So what we need is an average. We understand that it varies and there are outliers, but we need you to find some sort of mean or median or average, and we need to look at those, and that's how you develop assumptions and projections and forecasts and trends. For the violations, the question was how many violations did you have and how does that compare to prior year? And the response was that you can't quantify it because there is no digital mechanism in place and that the process is all performed manually by staff. So does that mean each person has their own system for tracking?
Correct. Like
Correct.
Each
And do you
inspector's-
have insight into those systems?
As I said, it's all manual. Every inspector is tracking their cases.
And do you know how many
following through.
cases they have?
At this moment, I don't know.
As their supervisor, as the director of the department, do you track those numbers?
I'm receiving monthly reports from staff to track what the activity is, but I can't say on a day-to-day basis how many they have.
Well, you
but
weren't
they're-
asked for day-to-day, you were asked for the, this is a report on kind of what's happened over the past year and what you anticipate happening over the next year. So each person's individual system of tracking, I would imagine, gets your eyes and your eyes at some point. And so are you tracking what they're doing?
Yes, I am.
So then can we get those tracking sheets? Because I would imagine that, I don't know whether there's something is lost in the translation of these, but I think that it sounds like there is a system, but it's not really up to date. It's manual, it's whatever tool someone knows how to use or handy, and so then therefore we can't really say how many violations are going out, how long it's been outstanding, how long that person's toilet hasn't flooded, how long that person's backyard skating rink is leaking into the house next door and causing floods in their basement. If we don't have any methods to track this, then that's why we can't actually track it, and that's why they don't seem to be resolved, and why they're in court for years at a place when we're given a situation like Skyline. So as we go through and we look and we say, well, what percentage of violations were resolved within a time frame? Can't quantify because there's no system. How many violations required escalation, fines, legals? What were the outcomes? Can't quantify. The department doesn't have a digital mechanism in place. What's the average time from complaint receipt to resolution? Cannot qualify. Complaints are case-by-case specific. What is the permitting? How many permits were issued, and what's the average time from application to permit issuance? Very dependent upon response from applicant. Again, no larger general kinds of trends or any information, just can't quantify it. How many applications were denied or required correction? Unknown. I don't know what it is that we need more people to do or when we don't know any of these answers.
So one of the reasons that we have been attempting to pursue a digital complaint system through the mayor's office was for this exact reason.
How long have you been there, Director McGrath?
How long have I been with the
Counselor,
town?
No,
I just
I
want to finish
get
the
this.
statement
Just
first.
to put it in context, because this is something that is very important. It needs to happen. But how long have you been here without this system?
How long have I worked for the town?
Yeah, because I imagine there hasn't been a
26
digital
years.
system. 26 years. Okay, and so in 2026, we're getting a system approved. Is that what's happening?
That is our hope and goal, is that's what's going to happen.
And it's in this budget here. that's how it happens? Or is that the one that's already connected with the fire department and all of these other things that we've heard about? the
Working with
permit?
through the mayor's office and Director Esmond, Finance Director Esmond, they have monies set aside that will be applied towards this software platform.
Is that in the IT budget, Director Esmond?
No, there's two parts of this that are funded differently. So the first part is the implementation that will be done by June 30th. So that will be funded through some of the remaining funds we have from a grant. And then the ongoing costs, that would be for the software, will be funded in the first year from the mayor's consultants reserve, or consultant and IT reserve that we set up. It's relatively small cost. I want to say the annual licensing is like less than $7,000 maybe. But we will intend to bring that onto the operating budget in 2028 once it's fully implemented and we have it in place for a year.
Okay, thank you. So just to follow up on Councilor Maglio's earlier points, I think we have this, so if before we hold the next, or the dedicated hearing on permitting fees and violation investigations, I think we're going to need more than, I'd like the reports, however they come. If it's, I'm assuming people are doing this in Excel, so at least it's trackable, but I do feel like it's fair and reasonable to get these answers for a town the size of Braintree. We should be able to quantify, in my opinion, like the number of violations we have. So even if it's a rudimentary spreadsheet, that feels like something that should be achievable, so that would be helpful. I think, Councilor Maglio, maybe I might suggest we put the committee members can discuss what specific information we expect for that follow-up.
I would start with, and I will send this over, but I will start with the lists of questions that I have asked in these meetings every year during every budget round. I would ask for the emails that I have sent every year through 2 administrations to that department for feedback and information on what is happening with some of these families that have been living in situations where finally a division from the AG's office is going to actually address it. So that's where I will go and look for these very same questions that have been raised every year at every hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I have 2 final questions on my list. The first is the number, Director McGrath, in your opening statement, you had made mention that you had a higher staff between 1996 and 2017. Do you have that staff count, what we had at either the beginning or end of 2017? And then where we're at today for your total staff? Okay.
Certainly. On the health side, it's been the same. On the building side, we had 4 building inspectors.
So we had 4 full-time building inspectors?
I'm sorry, Russ?
You know, weights and measures.
And weights and measures.
Okay.
And code compliance. So 6 support staff on the specific building division side. That doesn't include the electrical and plumbing and gas inspector.
And today we have 2 full-time inspectors?
Building inspectors,
Building
yeah.
inspectors, so
Yeah.
we've been working with half compared to what we had in 2017 and before 2017.
Correct.
Okay. And then the next item, I know I brought this up last year. My understanding was the chief of staff was going to address it, but again, I think where the counselors, or I'll speak for myself, we rely on the information that we can access readily for residents when we get asked. That's why we spend so much time on these numbers, right? So that we have easy to access information that we can share with residents when we get questions, because we can't call you. That's for another day. So part of the reason we are asking all these questions is because we feel constrained and unable to do, or I feel constrained and unable to do the best job for residents when I don't have access to good information. And an example of that is the ADA spreadsheet is still blank. That is on the website. I was assured last year that there may be work being done on a different spreadsheet that's not published, but this is the one I have access to, and this is the one the residents have access to. So I think we should either take the spreadsheet down, so when I get asked, I don't go in and say it's still blank, or it needs to be updated. So
I appreciate you bringing that to my attention, because our ADA coordinator updates that transition plan spreadsheet routinely and forwards it to the mayor's office. So I appreciate you.
It's not linked.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that that's corrected.
Yeah, I know this also, Madam Chair, from the Capitol meeting that we talked about this. So subsequent to that, we got some follow-up from folks. I'm sorry I don't know the exact location of that, but we will, because I think we may be, I'm hoping I can say that there's probably a version issue, and we can get this matter, we can get updates and at least get not a refreshed spreadsheet, because there was some information that was provided since then that of the listing of things that had been done to update what I think folks were tracking. So I'll take that back and just see if we can figure out which sites or where it's listed and get it refreshed.
Okay, thank you, Director Esmond. I will note this was brought up last year and the year before. So again, like, part of the frustration I think you're hearing tonight from many of us, and this isn't specific to licensing and inspections, is that, like, we have our hands tied, despite what our best efforts are to get information from staff here. We have to go through the clerk of the council. The clerk of the council then sends it to the mayor's office. The mayor's office sends it to the staff member. They have to stop what they're doing. And if we're lucky, then it goes back to the mayor's office. Then it comes back to the clerk of the council. Like, this process can take literally months. And it requires all of us to then keep track of all these things that we're just trying to get, like, one question answered for a resident to make somebody's day easier. So I say all this because I know that sometimes it can feel like there may be a lot of frustration coming from here, but frankly, like, this is our only opportunity to have conversations with department heads, because we're not allowed, per the charter, to call department heads, and that's another frustration. But so I will thank you for bearing with us this evening, and thank you for taking the feedback, and hopefully we can get that resolved. Okay. We've covered a lot. We're going to have a follow-up hearing. Thank you for that suggestion, Councilor Reynolds, on specifically the code compliance violations and fine collections, and we'll fine-tune that agenda and get the data requests sent up. Is there anything else for municipal licenses and inspections tonight?
I have a quick factual question.
Yep, go right ahead.
How many food establishments are there in Braintree?
We have permitted, hang on a minute, 400 and, wait a minute. They're broken into different categories, so I just need to calculate. So 227 fixed food establishments.
Okay.
We also are involved in permitting of mobile food units. We've permitted 37 mobile food units. also involved in permitting of temporary food establishments, which to date have been 63, not to date,
63, is that what you said?
63. That would be from July 1st, 25 to April 30th, 26.
So that's permitting and inspection, like the inspection comes in order for there to be a permit?
Correct.
Okay, so 227 fixed, 37 mobile, 63 temporary.
Yeah, and from July 1st of 25 through April 30th, 26, also 7 farmers market permits. So those would have been anyone that may not have been there at the start of the event. They may have just come in several weeks in or whatnot between the time that it would have started last June through its operation in October, or including the one event in November.
Okay, and the way that that would work, because between the mobile and the temporary, the mobile would be somebody who's serving coffee out of their mobile van, and they come through 12 times in the year. Right? Would that be the mobile,
A
or
good
pizza up at the Widowmaker or something?
Yeah, like a good example of a mobile would be those that set up at the Highlands Playground for the mobile festivals that they have each week in the summertime. That would be considered like a
Yep.
mobile food unit.
So those
yeah.
are food trucks. What would be the temporary?
Temporary food could be, for example, the July 4th festival. Anyone that may not be a mobile food unit and they're just setting up for that day, that could be a temporary food event. Let me think what else.
Okay,
Yeah.
because in your,
It
in
could-
the
A lot of
information.
temporaries are one-day events.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the information, and I'll say this now, and then I do think that we should continue to brainstorm,
yeah.
maybe separately, but it mentioned that there's no state recommendations for a building inspector ratio, or inspector to caseload ratio, and then the recommendation through Department of Public Health is 1 full-time employee to 150 food establishments. And so it seems like we are in the right range for the food establishments.
Just for food establishments, and in some communities, like for example in Boston, they have a division that the inspectors just do food inspections. In communities such as Braintree, we're not only doing food inspections, we're doing a multitude of other housing inspections.
Right, like
all
we
kinds
just
of-
talked
yeah,
about
a
with
variety
Skyline.
of inspections.
But for food establishments, so if people, well, we've got a lot of information from tonight, so I just
also
wanted to
mention-
verify those
I just thought of another
numbers.
good example of a temporary food event. The Asian festivals that have happened in, I believe one's like late September, early October, the last 2 years, and then there's the Lunar Festival that's occurred in January of each year. That's a perfect example of temporary food. They're there for the one day.
Yep. I just really wanted a number and then a way to distinguish, so that's good. I think that we need to do some reviewing of that too,
Okay.
because, a one-day permit is not, well, we can discuss that at the hearing.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. Actually, one more
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you,
one more
Sue.
thing. Did you say $7,000, Director Esmond?
That's what I said. If that's, maybe I can get you the exact number.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of numbers in my head.
Yeah, I bet there are.
Okay. And thank you, Clerk Semino. We do have one revolving fund for immunizations, $60,000. I will also say, thank you for offering flu clinics, because it is an awesome benefit for town of Braintree residents. Any questions on the revolving fund? Okay. Are we good on that? Okay. Thank you, Clerk Semino. All right. Thank you both so much for being here at the end of your regular workday and staying till almost 8 o'clock. We appreciate it very much, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Finance Department, thank you so much for being here, Christina O'Connell, our treasurer collector. The finance is on page 76 through 98 in the budget book. That seems long. Am I right on that? Oh, yes, because it covers the accountants and everything.
And I hope everybody has.
Yes, you should all have a copy of.
Very brief, promise.
Thank you for coming every single night, Director Esmond. Your presence is a huge help, and your knowledge and expertise are as well, and we appreciate all of your time. So take it away.
Thank you. So I'm going to work off the org chart that's on page 2, but just kind of want to quickly touch on a few things. One, I want to recognize my team that kind of fill out the key responsibilities of our department. Very quickly, just for clarification, because I think last night I said 17 finance department FTE. There's actually 16. We had 17 when we did some organizational changes last year. We no longer have a third position in the assessor's office. So Christina O'Connell is joining me tonight. She's our treasurer collector, as you all know. She is a critical leader in my team and leads the biggest group of our FTEs of our team, but also is extremely collegial and essential person to so many other departments. And that's, I think, probably one of the things that we focus on the most is how we can make town government work as well as possible and be a part of that. Mark Lynn is our longstanding town accountant. He leads the accounting team of 4, him included. And then Paul Sullivan's our deputy assessor. He has one person also in his team, Christina. And then finally, our procurement team. And I skipped over the treasurer collector's office, and I shouldn't have done that. There's many people we'd recognize. That we could name all the folks, but the deputy treasurer, Paula Agostino, is also a longstanding employee of our department and of the town, but a great resource, and another extremely customer-focused leader on our team. Jess Margettis as well, who's our treasurer accountant that is in the treasurer's office. There's many others, but they all play a critical part of our role. I do want to just say one other thing about the question that was asked last night, the comparison with the school finance and the town finance. I mean, obviously, I think there's some clear, not apples to apples here in our responsibilities versus theirs. But it's also, I think, important to note that there's a lot of other finance people located, if we want to call them that, located in other departments, primarily the biggest ones, specialized in what they do, and most importantly, accountable for the responsibilities, the controls, liaising with payroll, liaising with accounting, liaising with me, procurement. So if we were to truly study it, I don't think we fully answered that question last night. We didn't. I think you'd have to kind of look at it, and I think, that's probably an important part to really make that sort of analogy. So I think we could do more to kind of address that, kind of in going forward, and really look at, look at the responsibilities of a district finance office versus what they were. But I thought that was an important thing to note. Beyond the obvious sort of responsibilities in this chart, I do want to emphasize 2 critical things in the green. So debt management falls primarily under the finance department. Christina and I have very specialized roles to that, but we're really more of especially Christina, who is the actual person you authorize in your motions to do the borrowing with the mayor. But we do, everything we're doing is mindful of how much debt we have, making sure that all the debt is paid timely, because that is the full faith and credit of this town. But also the marketing and working with our partners to put Braintree on the best foot possible to the people who are going to facilitate, us being lent funding. So that's an important part. We do rely on, a financial advisory firm, Hilltop, to help us do a lot of that. We rely on bond counsel. So we have critical partners that help us, do that. But that's an important, thing that we all are part of. And, it's really important that we, that's why we focus a lot on many things in many dimensions. IT is another one. And, I talk a lot with my team, with Christina, with Mark, others on my team, with Lorraine, about the criticalness of IT. I think folks all know, but for the benefit maybe for residents, Braintree largely outsources our IT through the Braintree Electric Light Department. So essentially, there are no IT staff in the employ of the town of Braintree. And that's, we benefit very critically from the fact that they're making a lot of those investments. And there is consideration given to the town via payment to Beld for that benefit. But it's an important thing because a lot of what they do, it's important to know a lot of what they do is let's say the critical end user support, application support and hosting, security, cyber protections. They do training. They do that to protect us. And that's an ever-growing area of concern and focus for municipalities. But we don't, one thing we don't outsource to them, and we sort of rely on all of our various departments to do, is kind of technology strategy, and sort of what is where are we going? So we have a lot of departments that are doing a lot of good work in that. Potentially, I would say that we always are trying to be mindful of not duplication or overlap or redundancy. We benefit from having one single enterprise system. It's primarily used for accounting and financial payroll type of transactions. There are, a lot of HR is in there as well, but there's a lot of opportunity that we can continue to pursue. So as we get into sort of our goals and what we want to focus on in the year ahead and in the years ahead to support the mayor, to support town council, to support this town, technology is a critical part of that, and it has to be. And so I think you'll see that in some of our goals and also how we approach the work ahead of us. We don't have a huge budget across all the different departments. There's a lot of software funded, but sometimes, unfortunately, there's a lot of upfront cost to invest as far as consulting or other sort of external expertise that can sort of help you in where you go. We do fund some of that with Munis, so they can facilitate some of our visioning. But we have, Braintree is no different in the fact that we need to continue to focus on this, and it's going to continue to be an important part of it. And I would say, if I could wear a little bit of an HR hat, I don't think it's hyperbole to say, we have, a lot of people who, as they move on, retire and move on in their, in their lives to the glory days of retirement. It will probably be it'll be incumbent upon us to look at how we do the work and see how technology can help, facilitate the fact that we're resource constrained, and also when somebody has had a job, maybe even as much as 2-3 decades, generationally, it may be hard to recruit someone in that position. And it's an opportunity, but also a challenge. So I'll stop there on my on where we're going, but I just, I think that it's always important to note that IT sort of in the budget falls under finance, and I think we all very much appreciate the importance of having it sort of land in one place. We meet monthly with Beld, but it's really, it's a responsibility, and it's taken on by, a lot of people throughout the town, and as seen as a very important part of how we deliver services to the residents. Just turning to page 3 quickly on our budget, I won't dwell here for long. I think the members of the committee are familiar with the programs in our budget. I tried to sort of break out year-over-year changes from the variance from fiscal 27 compared to fiscal 26, based on sort of where, with certain things being withheld or excluded, to give sort of a point of consideration. Important thing to note in the finance administration program is where we have the collective bargaining reserve. So under Chapter 150E, we have to file an appropriation, which needs to be considered and presumably approved by the legislative body, town council, for any agreement that we reach to be made effective. And so historically, we've always funded those reserves, whether it's under HR or under finance, and only then transferred the funds once they have been approved by town council. So that's why they sit under finance. In fiscal 26, we budgeted for 2%, so that corresponds to the 711,000. In fiscal 27, we are budgeting for a 2.75% increase in fiscal 26 and a 2.75% increase in fiscal 27. So that's why you don't just see the numbers doubling. That reflects where we're landing at we have not reached full agreements with all the units. We're still very much in the process of that. So you'll see, probably the most important number that I sort of put at the bottom as far as the variance. If you back out debt, collective bargaining, and insurance, the finance department is essentially level, 0.3% change from year over year. And that is accounting for the changes that are within individual departments. So for example, the information technology department goes up corresponding to the annual increase in our agreement with BELD, as well as the increase in the Munis contract. And that's offset by some reductions, primarily in the assessor's office, with the year 3 of the valuation contracts, as well as eliminating the full year savings from not having a third employee there. So for the most part, we're flat year over year. I think it's important to note the two places that I mentioned additionally that would, in that analysis that were excluded. So debt service is a substantial part of the finance department appropriations. Overall, debt service is essentially level year over year. And this corresponds to the budget, the 2026 capital improvement program that was presented. So these costs reflect borrowings that were done through through February of 2026, plus short-term borrowing that we will do in repay in fiscal 27. So essentially, this is all the debt. This reflects all the debt we've currently issued or anticipate to issue by the end of June. Again, it's flat. And as the members of the committee know, we have forecast projections for debt service, still using that 6 to 7% band as the affordability construct under the mayor's debt affordability model. With respect to insurance, we probably don't talk too much about insurance, but it's obviously an essential part of municipal government, is to ensure that we're insuring our properties, covering general liability, auto, police, law enforcement, policies, and cybersecurity. Those are all policies and coverage lines that were underwritten. This is just the general fund portion. You can see right now the budget assumes 11% growth in the premium. I'm hopeful that with credits, et cetera, we'll do better. But in the insurance market, this has continued to be a challenge for the town and any town, most towns. Although I think we're seeing some encouraging signs that some of our claims history is starting to we're benefiting from not having a substantial claims loss run. Lastly, I will just move to page 4, and just kind of highlight some of the themes and goals, and we'd be happy to answer any specifics about the goals that are in the book. But just kind of divided them up into 3 groupings, and thought that might help to sort of answer some of the questions that were asked about sort of how we develop them. I mean, these are thematically, sort of how I broke down from a finance department perspective, how we've approached these. I think one of the things we've tried to do is to try in fiscal 27 get away from sort of listing the day-to-day things we do as goals, although I will say they are very tasking on teams, and so I wouldn't want to understate the importance of our day in, day out work that our team does to make sure that we are meeting all the responsibilities of each of these departments. But just very quickly, I think on financial policy procedural components, that has been something we've listed in the budget and continue to try to do to enhance the things that we do. I've talked about the capital planning in the 2026 capital improvement program. We want to continue to support the mayor in the effort of trying to continue to make more of that available, try to make it more digitally accessible so that it's not in PDF spreadsheets and things like that, but something that can be used. Also, I think that another goal is to try to provide a more routine update, whether it's quarterly or potentially biannually for the Ways and Means Committee, so that we can really kind of present how we're doing, talk about variances where things have changed. So it's not presented just once a year as part of the filing of the plan. Grants management, we've talked, multiple times with the committee and internally about this. What the steps we've taken to date have been to try to expand the amount of information that we are collecting. We shared the list today for the committee members. I think what we continue to do is see a lot. I think we've been able to track that the departments are report on what the departments have successfully been awarded, as well as try to do better on what we have applied for and been rejected. I know there are still questions about what about the other things, right? Like the things we didn't apply for, why didn't we, or did we know about them? So in fiscal 27, getting sort of past the first phase of sort of pulling the data together, we want to focus on things like having a external focus, so establishing an email address with a listserv, so ideas can be circulated, and then we can report back on if that grant opportunity was pursued, or departments feedback about why, if something wasn't pursued or what the challenges were. Similarly to what I mentioned on the capital plan, trying to make more of that information available, just sort of passively to be reviewed at a cadence that we can manage. Internally, I think looking at some of our financial procedures, I think one thing we have in sort of the town accountant's goals is to try to work on some of the sort of long-term fund cleanup that we'd like to do. I think in looking at a lot of the grant data, we see a lot of data that we want to work to close out in the next year. That's somewhat related to financial reporting too, but a lot of these goals cross sort of purpose and responsibility. I think the last thing I'd say on the grants management, I think we continue to want to responsibly look at the resources we have and roles and responsibility. This is a team effort. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. I think just like budgeting and just like what I said earlier about IT, grants, applications, the roles of who's getting it, that is shared by a lot of different departmental staff. It's Lorraine C., who is our contract administrator / grant writer, is doing a lot of sort of central quarterbacking, but gathering information, sort of, potentially sharing some of the information, but a lot of and you can see, I think, in the reporting, a lot of different departments, and in the testimony that's been in front of the committee, they're doing, the yeoman's work about actually kind of doing the hard work of getting the grants or not getting them, but, tracking them. And even the tracking part, it's more of a job than, it's something that we want to make sure we're staying on track of. Like, for example, in the spreadsheet that we sent over, which was requested and filled in early April, I think, Since then, we've reported on 2 subsequent grants that aren't even on that, so related to the earmark at the firehouse or the MVP. So this is again, I recognize this is something that is a routine, not a once-a-year reporting process. And like all things, I think we're trying to continue, like the pathway on these financial policies and procedures, continue to show steady progress towards that. I'm going to ask Christina to talk about the investment policy really quick, because I think this really much falls under her basket, but she's put a lot of hard work into this, and maybe you could just say a few sentences about what this goal would be for this year.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. Use the mic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. The investment policy statement is a statement that governs how the town manages, and all municipalities should have an investment policy statement. It governs how the town manages its investments, whether it be through the prudent investor list or whether it be through the state-funded list. It also, you could have separate investment policy statements to also govern how you manage your enterprise funds or your general funds. And these policies range from 5 pages to 20 pages, just depending on how detailed you want to be. They could detail out your strategy for risk. They could give you objectives for rates of return. They could include controls that you want to outline for the management of certain funds, particularly in this town. My focus would be on how we manage and oversee not only the scholarship program, which we've done a lot of work to shore up, but how we also manage our other funds that are invested here by the town that have been bequeathed to us by individuals who used to live here. Sylvanus Thayer, Nathaniel Thayer, Hollis, all of these funds we manage and invest, but we don't have a policy to oversee how we manage and invest them. In years past, there used to be councils and committees. Those have fallen by the wayside with the new form of government, and I think I'm certain we need an investment policy statement to outline for accountability, for transparency, and frankly, for risk management as well. Right now, you've effectively got just me, which is though I have the full faith and confidence in my ability, as well as I enjoy that from my boss, that's not particularly prudent. I think we should have more eyes on these things, and the policy statement would go a long ways to ensuring that. So I think that's a critical piece that I want to have as a goal for fiscal year 27.
Thanks, Christina. Yeah. I'll wrap up on sort of the digital government and the customer service pieces, because I think those are I think a little more I think get more to the mission ultimately of what we're trying to do and enhance our work. Christina and others across town government are going to be critical to this. I mean, we want to. I think the mayor's message in the budget kind of touches on this, and we want to be one of the key parts of moving this forward. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, that we will see unfolding in the next few years related to artificial intelligence, but I think what we're really talking about is like data analytics and data management. The towns, municipalities have a lot of access to information. We store a lot of information. It's every year it feels like we're being able to link a little bit more of it, but making sure that particularly if we're resource strained and we're not bringing on new people, that we're able to perform the responsibilities we have that we must do every day, accounting transactions, financial transactions, as efficiently as possible, so that the people that are here can do the work that they, let's say the most creative or requiring the most analysis. Their time is freed up for those things, and that's something that I think municipalities understandably are behind a little bit in the adoption, but this is one that we really want to look at and pursue and find opportunities for. And I think it will be a great help for us to look at our teams and see how we can upskill and offer that sort of opportunity for them as well. probably related to technology and AI, but probably just related to serving our residents just in how we do it. We view ourselves as a service department, and we've got a lot of staff who interact with our residents all the time. And so we want to continue. One of the goals we have is really to kind of really complete the cross-training that was envisioned in the reorg we did last year. I want to do more work to understand the customer patterns at Town Hall to make sure that we're deploying people as efficiently as we can, and also trying to provide the services to people in the way that's effective for the town, and gets to try to help as much as possible differentiate the needs of each people. And I use the example that everybody queues outside the treasurer collector's office, even though they might all have different needs, and some of them can be solved in a couple seconds. Well, a couple seconds, but quickly. Others can't, and it's hard to kind of have right now. We're not really using a way to sort of triage that type of thing. And technology, without having a person sitting outside a desk, RMV style, kind of saying, okay, take that ticket and go in that line or whatever. Although that's an interesting model. Technology could be another way for us to try to work to that. It's not going to be done. I think what we're trying to say, be realistic. It's not going to be done in fiscal 27, and we don't have any funds in this budget that really move forward. But we have the people that can do the work, really work with our peers, work with the associations we're part of, work with the town auditor, and the resources that CLA can help, work with others to try to put together a roadmap that addresses both the things we have to do, risk, the controls, but also tries to enhance the services, or at least preserve services that we face when we're resource strained. So thank you for the opportunity for us to talk about ourselves, which obviously I love to do, and try to make the world of finance as exciting as possible. We really thank you. We thank the mayor for her leadership and support in a lot of the things we're doing, and look forward to questions that we can answer tonight or in the months and quarters ahead.
Thank you, Director Esmond, and thank you, Treasurer O'Connell, for being here tonight and for that thorough explanation. I will open it up to committee members for questions. Who wants to lead us off? Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you. So the first question I had, you raised a thought that I'd never had before about our interaction with BELD, and they're our principal, our exclusive IT support. And I guess I'm curious to know, I see that in the budget detail on line 530004, we have a line for BELD IT support, and I'm just curious, how is that sum negotiated?
So we've had a long-standing memorandum of agreement essentially in place, I think, since the city form was adopted. Perhaps it was even before that, and I'm happy to provide it. We've had a written agreement with them for a long period of time, and under the agreement that we agree to fund them we increased that 25,000 by 25,000 every year. So that is kind of set on that schedule, and that's how the year-over-year change is the basis of that.
So it's 25,000 a year every year. And BELD also pays pilot to Braintree?
Correct.
So it doesn't interact with that at all?
No, they're totally unrelated.
Okay. And does BELD also service the schools?
No.
No.
No, good. No, I should have clarified that. It's just with the town side of the town of Braintree.
Okay. So then the next question I have is, I see that in the budget detail, OPEB liability is just not where it used to be. Can you tell me where it is?
So, yes, we have not funded that, I think, since fiscal 23. So we have not been setting aside general fund dollars. We have a substantial, in the millions of dollar balance in our OPEB fund. The long-standing approach that the town has articulated to resolve OPEB, which we have not changed at this time is that when the pension, so the pension liabilities that the town funds for not just from the general fund but from all sources escalates at roughly right now it's set at a 7.1% increase each year, and that will be reset again this summer. So that is much higher than what we'll call the normal cost so the normal contributions we would have as we're trying to advance and catch up to the payments we should have been putting into the fund for decades, right? So there's I'm doing this with my hands, but we have charts that show this, but there's a substantial cliff at the end of the repayment, which right now is scheduled for 2034. Once that repayment is fully made, so the fund is fully funded at 100%, there's a meaningful drop-off to then be funding at your normal cost. The intention, I think the longstanding articulated, and this Braintree is not alone in this, is that the difference, that drop-off allows for the, essentially, if just even level funded, you would just start setting that money aside for addressing your OPEB liability. Right now, the reality is that we're paying our OPEB costs, we're still pay-go. So when our contributions for our retirees from our health insurance trust fund are not paid from any other fund. Essentially, they're paid from the health insurance trust fund, the resources that go into the health insurance trust fund, so the town's appropriation in the current year budget. When they are large enough and the OPEB fund is funded, then we would potentially draw from that every year. But we have not been doing that because we haven't been putting in. And just, I think it remains a question every year. The bond rating agencies are very well aware of Braintree's our long-term articulated approach. But long-term healthcare costs in some ways are as challenging, if not more, than pension costs, because the pension valuation is very much driven by what annual salaries are and mortality rates, and then obviously the performance of the various bond and equity markets. But a lot of those are known things. Health insurance is the underlying cost of health insurance is very challenging to project, particularly as mortality rates thankfully grow or change. And so that's been our approach. That's been the approach. It is the goal to fully fund it once the pension is something that we will have to all strategically make sure that we do when the time is there to do it.
Okay, so when we have funded our pension liability, we will divert those monies to begin funding OPEB once again?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. And will all of that funding be required to fund in its entirety? It's kind of a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, you're right. And I think it's hard to say. I mean, I think we could, we have the OPEB valuation is done every year, so we can I can get back to you on like sort of where we stand now, and if you looked at it, how it would go. But it's hard to project with a lot of precision or even accuracy on where that OPEB liability is going to be valued in 2034. It really is dependent upon that.
Is 2034 when our pension liability will
We're
be
scheduled
paid
for
down?
2034
Okay.
as of now, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. The last question I have is related to debt service. I know that we took on a substantial amount of debt service to pay off the renovation and expansion of East Middle School, and I'm wondering like where we are in paying that down.
So East, off the top of my head, I want to say is actually it's very close to the amount. It's about 2.6 million a year, and the bonds expire. Do you? Okay, I'm going to say we can get you the exact date. We have all this, obviously. I probably could pull it up, but it's I want to say it's like 20, probably in the 20. Those are 25-year bonds or 30-year bonds, I think. So I think 44 or so or something.
Okay.
We can, Counselor. I'm sorry. We'll get you the
That's
exact
okay.
date.
I just like it's not the specific data that I need so much as an understanding of trends. So, and it might be different, but when you pay down a mortgage, your payments change, they get smaller as the mortgage matures. Maybe that's the right term, or maybe not. But where are we in that bell curve?
So those, that borrowing was done, so most of the borrowing the town does is set on actually sort of fixed principal payments. So we're actually, the annual total debt service reduces every year because there's a declining balance. Like a mortgage for a house is often set sort of, you have a fixed payment approach. So you're basically saying, like, 30 years, I want to pay the same amount every year. The purchasing power of the cost of it relatively goes down, right? Because people earn more over time, and so that the mortgage is a lower amount of their income potentially. So that is a fixed. I think in the case of East, we structured it as a level payment because it is long-term debt, and we wanted to have that sort of continuity. Similarly, I believe South, that we've structured it essentially as level payment. Most of our debt we issue on level principal. So the annual borrowing will reduce over time. The litigation settlement we did last year, that was also a annual level payment because it was such a 15-year term. So I'm sorry if that's, that's where we.
You explained it. You did.
Okay.
You did just fine. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Reynolds?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for being here this evening and your patience. I just want to follow up for clarity purposes on that interchange and explaining OPEB versus muni pensions and the liabilities that the town face presently. Braintree's not alone. Most towns and cities in this Commonwealth have a liability in their pension and their OPEB. And the goals were set by the state government back, I'm going to say in the 70s, I think, maybe even the 80s, that the municipalities had until, effectively now, until 2036 for the pension. Is that true?
2040.
2040. I think what I mixed up there is that Braintree's on track for 36.
We're 2034. We moved it 2 years ago from 2033 to 2034. But we are still a 2034 community.
Yes. So we have two liabilities. One is OPEB and one is pension. And I just want to make sure that I understood that the approach at this particular point in time, the strategy is to, well, you had mentioned we have not been paying OPEB, towards the OPEB liability for the last few years. Correct? Did I hear that
Correct.
correct?
We have not been appropriating general fund dollars to the OPEB fund for 3 years now.
Got it. Okay. And the reason for that is a deliberate strategy, and that is you first want to fully fund the pension. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I am assuming the pension is a higher I can't even talk, sorry, liability than the OPEB is on an annual basis.
Correct. And pension also has a fully funded requirement where OPEB isn't yet there.
Got it. That's an important point.
It is,
Thank
yeah.
you.
It's a very, I don't know what the Commonwealth will decide. I think they're trying to be measured about how many of these things they put on communities that are constantly trying to address long-term liabilities, but also fund their schools and fund roads and it's a balance, right? And I think, if I could say, Councilor, I think we actually, the last year I think the first year we didn't fund OPEB was in fiscal '24. So this would be, I said 3 years, but this would be the fourth year. But it's not that, this is a choice. It's not a choice that we're extremely happy about making, but we think it's the right choice with all the other things that we're challenged.
Sure. You've spoken numerous times and made reference to risk management, right? Risk assessments. This falls into a managed risk that the town has given lots of thought to. You have other balls in the air that you're balancing at the same time, other risks that you're managing at the same time. So, I mean, I would be in agreement that this is a prudent step in trying to take care of our municipal pension liability. At the same time, we all understand that our pension liability is a piece of our overall debt obligation on an annual basis. We can choose that for OPEB, but overall, for the general purposes of this discussion, that it's part of our debt. We pay off, in best case scenario, we pay off, whether it's 2032 or 2034 or an earlier year, we're in a great position at that time to cut down on our debt position significantly. Because it's a couple of $1 million at minimum, I'm assuming, for our pension liability.
We could get to that projection. I think it'll be somewhere, if off the top of my head, I want to say it's in the single millions.
Okay.
But the pension schedule by 2034 envisions us appropriating 30 million.
Yes, I saw those numbers.
So it,
For just for a year to stay in sync with one
yeah,
year.
I mean, the ramp up is meaningful, yeah.
Wow, okay, so that's a piece that's very interesting. Okay, so obviously as time goes by, the costs are going to be higher, but our hope is that our investment returns are going to be higher as well. So, I mean, this is the whole nature of investing and debt management, right? It's really just how much risk are we willing to accept? What's the level of risk we're willing to accept? And I feel comfortable the way that this town has managed looking at that risk and how much we're willing to accept based on other factors that relate directly to our ability to generate revenues versus cost and cost containments, all of those things. So, and I found it very interesting too. So this is also part of my question or my statement or inquiry is that the treasurer has also spoken about a policy statement on how the town invests our money. You have identified a need for a more articulated, more risk-assessed control for that process. And you cited a couple of examples of how it was done, that the choice of investments were done in the past. And I agree with you 100% that we've narrowed down those who are making the decisions on where to invest. And I trust the folks you folks, as they do, the prudent, when we've changed now to, what is it, the prudent man's rule?
Prudent investor.
Prudent investor's rule, thank you. I'm very happy about that as well. And so that's just going to support us. That's going to support and I 100% support you on looking at that policy of a control, something to put in place. Do you have any kind of a timeline that you're thinking of making suggestions or beginning discussions?
Yes, I'm in drafting an IPS. We're consulting with various financial institutions with which we do business. We're getting their input on, and also trying to get other towns' IPS so as not to have to reinvent the wheel wholly. But we've worked a lot, or I've worked a lot over the past 6 months and looking at those. I have most of the material gathered. I would fully expect to have a draft to Mike by the end of the calendar year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a very reasonable goal to attain. Because again, we've gathered a lot of the groundwork already.
Got it. So you're working with other communities too, as part of this partnering?
Through the financial institutions, they're providing me other communities' investment policy statements. Yeah, they're very transparent with that kind of stuff.
So you're taking advantage of these fact that these folks are seeing
Yes.
this as well.
Well, and frankly, the financial institutions are really wanting us to have an investment policy statement because it helps them with their guardrails as well with how to
Yes.
invest our money. So they're looking for us to get this document, so they're being very helpful.
I would 100% agree with you, and I'd support it any way I can.
Thank you for your time.
All right. That is all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Sterling, did you have anything? For the finance team? And Counselor Magley, you're good. I have a couple of questions and clarifications I'm hoping you can help me with. So we've heard throughout the last 7 days about the incoming and, hope for new growth and development, and the fact that, I think we're all pretty sure that that's going to require additional inspectional services staff and planning department staff. And I'm setting aside public safety in schools because there are separate mitigation agreements in place with the developers in the town to ensure those departments are sufficiently staffed. So when I was looking at the new growth figures, Director Esmond, you have it at $1 million, and I'm like wondering, are we being too conservative with that? Are we thinking these aren't going to be online quick enough? I mean, these projects take an ungodly amount of time.
They do. They do. I'm sorry.
No, I'm worried we're undercutting ourselves when we really need to be ramping up on support staff.
Mm-hmm. So new growth kind of happens in what I call essentially two buckets. There's let's say the first bucket's the churn, which could be defined, let's say as where we collect new growth identified as maybe less than 50,000. And a lot of the things that are less than 50,000 are probably well under 50,000. And that goes to such small things like just a small home improvement, to something that, maybe it's a commercial investment, or personal property is sort of another one, large investment from a company's perspective, but it translates into something in that. That, I think, what I've tried to work to say is, okay, what is that a reliable, safe number every year? And it's a little bit hard to kind of land on that. Personal property, the things we've done with the new valuation just on personal property has really helped, kind of elevate that a little bit. But I think that's something in the range of something in the range of 400,000 to 500,000 a year. And then there's always some reliable part of that second bucket that's just going to be larger projects. I mean, that are not necessarily the big sort of the large things that are being kind of contemplated in our discussions about these meaningful, big, large development, but they still add a lot, and they might add more than 50,000 in their individual groups. And so those also, probably generate somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 a year. So the $800,000 that we've used the last couple of years is probably on the low end safe, because we've been able to achieve it both years in my time, but I know there has been years we didn't. And there might have been some economic factors as much as anything else that it's really hard to parse out. Where it gets to the big ones, that's the challenge, is the nature of when we actually capture the value that's subject to the taxation. And these projects don't move slowly. If you think about, they move slowly in the picture of when we capture the full valuation that's recognized by the assessor's office and is part of that year's taxes, from when they first are permitted all the way to that. So that might be 3 years, but we do capture value. There is a methodology that's accepted for value capture. And Paul could talk to you sort of about the really kind of nuances of that. So this assumes, I think, hopefully conservatively, that we would capture value in sort of the projects that we know, the 125, 44 Allen, on Hancock Street, we have a residential project. But I think everyone knows about June 30th, none of those projects will be fully captured in their valuation. So, and it's possible, that we won't capture even all of what's required to get us to $1 million. It's not riskless, but I think we felt, the mayor and I talking and others felt like this was a safe and appropriate increase. And we're basing the budget on it, and so we wanted to be measured. I don't think it's woefully conservative. I think I feel like it's appropriate given what we know, and that we know that most of the big development won't be fully capturing their valuation on June 30th, which is really when the last date by which we can, get it.
Okay, thank you.
But, yeah.
No, that's helpful. I want to just go on the record as saying, like, the success of the projects that are currently underway of all kinds is just massively important for so many reasons. And I have a lot of concerns that, like, we need to, like, pre-build our staff to support. Again, I'm setting aside public safety and schools for these comments because those have other mitigation aspects to them. But, like, if we don't have the proper planning staff, if we don't have enough people in buildings and inspections to do the inspections, to get the certificates of occupancy, to issue the permits in a timely fashion, like, these projects won't succeed to the degree that this community deserves, and we need them to succeed. And we have a lot coming on in a short amount of time, and maybe there's a way midstream that we can get grants or some other way to help partially offset or fund, whether it's through state or other quasi-state agencies that can provide temporary assistance till we can get staffed appropriately. But it's a little bit of chicken and an egg here, and I just want to make sure that we're planning forward for success. So thank you for that. The next question I have along those same lines is, have we looked at any form of regionalization for any of our departments? I know there's some initiatives going on elsewhere in the state. Usually it's out with the western part of the state with rural communities, but there is some talk and movement about the importance of regionalizing, whether it's, with just neighboring communities. I know we have one public health initiative that's a regional initiative, but is there any effort to look at the benefits, and both from a cost and human resource perspective, with the dearth of, like, assessors and building inspectors and public nurses? Have we looked at that as a cost savings and staff augmentation possibility?
So in two cases, but I would say that I think it is in Governor Healy's MEA, it was recognized, I think, as something that that I think there's a west to east movement that's going on. So I think they are looking, I mean, particularly I think in that legislation, I think assessors was one they were definitely looking at. And there's communities in the smaller town parts of the Commonwealth where, I mean, that's almost critical for them to regionalize. UMass, so the Collins Center does have opportunities. I think a lot of them, and it's not to say that there is a lot of, I think we do not want to continue to look at this. I think they kind of push a lot to the regionalization of, like, the E911 type of opportunities, which is out there as sort of a financial incentive. With respect to the municipal licensing, I mean, I have had a conversation with Norfolk County about the weights and measures. The numbers just didn't pencil on a limited amount of revenue that we collect for the fees that we have, and the fee that they would potentially, we understood. We didn't, we didn't have a very lengthy, in-depth conversation with them to sort of get a quote, but that's something I think that would still remain on the table as I think that matures. I mean, I think that initiative's only maybe in its third year with Norfolk County. So I think a lot of it will have to be, annually looked at and seen as a goal. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that's for municipalities, as we continue to see some of these very skilled senior members of our teams ride off into the sunset. I worry about how we're going to replace those people, like who wants to do the job. And I'm not an HR specialist, but I just think I think I'm not, way off base on that. That's where I do think regionalization. I think people structuring, having sort of using technology at the right times can really assist in a lot of that. But that's going to be an important part of it. And I would say I don't know all the answers. I don't know, Christine, if there's anything else you'd add. But I think that's one of the. I didn't touch on it much in our presentation, but I think that's absolutely one of the things we need to focus on.
And if I may, Counselor, I know just as a smaller scale, but as an example of the finance department's constant looking out at the horizon to either shared services programs, whether it's shared within the town or outside of the town. I think our tax title payment collections process is a good example of how we sought to regionalize resources, and we saw a heightened rate of return for that very small investment when we partnered with Norfolk County. Just a very small example of how we are, particularly within our department, always looking to do things like that, whether it's within the departments within finance or going outside of the town, in particular to Norfolk County. I mean, the small investment that we made there, the rate of return, I can't recall what it was, but I know I presented it to you previously. It was significant, and we'll always look to do that. That's prudent, for lack of a better word.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. My last question is a little technical. It can wait too, or you can email me an explanation, Director Eisenman. So in the revenue on other financing sources, are the debt exclusions become part of our operating levy?
Correct.
Right? And then the way I understood what was laid out in the capital plan, the debt exclusion for Old South was part of the capital plan too, if I'm remembering correctly.
Correct.
So it's realized in both locations? Is that just how the levy is calculated? Is that why?
The debt excluded funded capital on the capital plan actually represents payments related to the South project. The debt exclusion in the that you're seeing that we raise on the levy and then we appropriate, that's just for the debt service itself. So they're essentially different. We're spending money. One, we're closing that project out. We still, like the payments that were reflected in the capital plan, our payments we paid this year primarily to the GC as part of project closeout costs.
Okay.
And to the consultant, the OPM and the design team. As we continue to close that project out, the levy raises just the annual debt service.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I understand that, but I definitely understand it more than I did before that explanation, so thank you. That was all I had. Go ahead, Counselor.
Okay, thank you. Just a point of clarification. First point, if I may, I'm looking in, I'm not quite sure if this was the question that was asked by one of the previous members, but in looking at the budget in brief, the principal payments on debt and interest payments on debt, where they look like they're going down, those are just reflective of, they don't include what we talked about earlier from OPEB and pension, but rather that just is our overall debt service that we have is going down. Correct?
Correct.
That's what we're seeing. It's just going, that's a good story.
Well,
in a way, it's a good
leave
story.
it to a finance director to find a way to kind of
All right, well, I'm throwing you one.
6 to 7% we're now on the low end, where this is 6.3% of our operating revenue. So we're well in our affordability band, but the affordability band, I think the mayors really kind of want to stress that, this is debt service for keep the important investments, roads. We're keeping the vehicle fleets updated. You've helped support some of the replacement and capital projects. school technology. I mean, there's a lot of important things we fund in that $96 million over 5 years. But there's obviously things that are not addressed in that. And I think that's an important thing to note. So while the debt liability on the operating budget is going down, modestly, but also we're maintaining it in a affordable band. Because the goal is not to have it jump to 7% next year or 7.5%, and that's going to squeeze out in other operating parts of our budget that are critical and we already are challenged to support. So it's just a matter, to just be clear, I mean, is 6 to 7 the appropriate amount when we know we have looming, capital investments that need to be made?
Right. No, those are, thank you for adding in those other perspectives to that number, what it looks like, because it is part of a bigger picture, and it's relative to what exactly as you said, what's the overall budget looking like, and what's the percentage of this piece in the overall budget? Okay, so, because those numbers change from year to year. Got it. Yeah. And the band description was very apt, I thought, too. My second question for you was, Christine, I know you were talking, you were answering questions from the chair about shared services, regionalization. There are discussions that are going on. You had talked about how you have been engaged with the county government as well, and which I think is a great idea too. They're there to serve our communities. We pay for their budget, so let's get what we can, right, out of it. And they offer, honestly, our Norfolk County commissioners are very good in that sense, looking at what can we do to help the towns. Would there be an opportunity to share technologies, enterprise-wide technologies that, say, we use Munis, for example? Are there opportunities for communities to share enterprise technologies that would make it cheaper for us to use Munis? I'm just throwing out an example. Say Braintree, Weymouth, and Quincy got together and say, hey, we're going to buy this Munis package. And all three of us will use the same package for the same contract, and you have your firewalls between each of the communities for your security and confidentiality. Has that been talked about at all in your discussions?
Counselor, I appreciate the creative thinking on things like that, because that's precisely what we need to be doing. In that case, we have not had that conversation. I know that Beld, as our IT support, would probably want to weigh in on the idea of that.
Risk management, right?
Right. I mean, we've had some challenges just in incorporating the enterprise ERP. That's the new name for Munis. We had some challenges even just trying to incorporate the Tri-Town the Tri-Town Enterprise ERP platform. With
but we're getting there.
We're getting there. We are getting there, but that's a big struggle, and a big part of that is because we wanted to initially try to share services, and ultimately the answer to that was we simply cannot. Beld IT, said there's too many hurdles there with usernames and platforms, and pardon my ignorance on the IT terminology there, but simply because the users are tied to your email address. For example, so the challenge of, okay, well, now we need another user email address if you want to use the same license, but you can't. So there's challenges like that. It doesn't mean that they can't be overcome, and it's certainly something we can continue to look into.
Are those proprietary challenges or standards by the provider of?
They are. They're absolutely by the provider and by where the platform is, where it's based, if it's cloud-based or whether it's based, physically with you. But they're pushing, Munis in particular is pushing to a cloud-based platform. So we definitely see challenges in having multiple entities. The town of Braintree is one entity. The retirement board is a separate entity. Obviously, Tri-Town, a third entity, as would other towns be. Multiple entities trying to use the same license for the same platform. Thus far has not been successful, but we will continue to look into that. I do like the idea of trying to share those resources.
Interesting. So I'd really be interested in where that conversation goes.
Yeah.
Identifying what those barriers are is really going to be important to challenge the private sector and the providers as
Yeah,
well.
And Counselor, I couldn't agree more. And we've also had some success with Munis in the training, shared training. I think you guys might be aware that the town of Braintree hosted Munis training last year here in this beautiful hall, and we had towns from all over the region come here. And so what we did in that, we were trying to share knowledge, but then we also were able to share some of that particular training was free. They provided that free to us. We could attend without charge, so long as we hosted it, and other towns took advantage of coming here locally. We try to also share other training experiences. I will go often, because of the relationships we build, we can go and sit in on Quincy's training. You know, if they have extra seats, they'll let us go sit in. So those are, on a smaller scale, things that we're trying to share. But we always have an eye to it, and I absolutely appreciate the concept, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate your answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hopefully, all those folks are eating at our restaurants and adding to our meals tax when they come here. All right. Any further questions for this evening? All right. Thank you all again, both to the committee members, Director Esmond, Christine O'Donnell for being here this evening. Is there a motion to table orders 26033, 26034, and 26035?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. All right. Our next meeting, everybody gets Friday night off from budget hearings. Our next meeting will be Monday, May 18th, back here again at 6 o'clock. Thank you so much to the BCAM team. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.